Superintendent and Borough Commander for Hounslow. He won the British Indian Award 2014 in the Civil Services and Armed Forces category. We welcome you, sir. Before we begin, we would like the participants to keep in mind the following. The session will begin with a 5-minute presentation from the Foundation for Democratic Reforms. The chair for the session will present his views for 10 to 12 minutes. The chair will then call upon speaker who will also have 10 to 12 minutes to share their insights. Post that, the chair may open the session for the panel discussion. The last 30 to 45 minutes will be dedicated to taking questions from the audience. We request the participants to keep the questions brief and lucid and also mention the panelists that they would like the question to be directed to. If there are any technical glitches, be assured that they will be resolved as soon as possible. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will all find the session engaging. I now invite my colleague Shruti to give a short presentation on the agenda for the session.
Thank you, Meena. A very warm welcome and a good morning to all the speakers here and the participants. I'll start the presentation.
Hello. Sit down. Why are you standing?
In a democracy as big, culturally diverse, and socially stratified as India, the role of an efficient and well-functioning police force cannot be overstated. Although our police has by and large been successful in maintaining order, the growing challenges of a modern society have rendered our police ineffective in many ways, as we saw in our inaugural video. India is undergoing rapid urbanization, and crime has risen over the past decade from 180 instances per 100,000 population in 2009 to 240 instances in 2019. Moreover, newer forms of crime are evolving, and the polarized public discourse is presenting critical challenges to public order, as the ongoing farmers' protests clearly illustrate. The police, however, has not evolved at the same pace as society. As a result, they fail to meet the needs and expectations of modern society and often come under harsh criticism. Fear and mistrust of the police is common in the public eye, and they are simply seen as tools of those in power. Some of this criticism is warranted. The custodial deaths in Tamil Nadu during the lockdown are totally unacceptable in a democracy. However, instead of blaming the police, we must understand the challenges that they face and rectify the systemic deficiencies that allow the police to act the way they do. One of the biggest impediments to the effective function of police is the high degree of concentration of functions in a single force. Each of these functions requires a different kind of training, skill set, knowledge, and expertise, all of which cannot be sustained in a single force. Moreover, when the police perform so many ad hoc duties, measuring their performance or ensuring accountability becomes ineffective. The quality of their function naturally suffers. A shocking fact is that only 1% of the total strength of our police force is in the state crime investigation departments, despite crime investigation being one of the primary functions of policing. Now, the entire strength of the police force is also severely insufficient. We have one of the lowest police numbers in the world compared to our population. In India, we have about 156 police personnel per 100,000 population, whereas the norm elsewhere is around 250 to 300. Police training is also inadequate. Just over 1% of the total expenditure on police is dedicated to police training each year. The training institutes are struggling to retain instructors. In keeping with the colonial times, training still focuses on discipline and regimentation rather than the behavior and attitude of policemen, which is critical to the way they interact with modern society. In the absence of effective training, the police are left underprepared and inefficient. To make matters worse, the technology and infrastructure that is available to the police is also grossly insufficient. How can we expect an overworked, underprepared, and ill-equipped force to work effectively? Although there are many areas of reform that are critical in the police force, today's discussion will focus on 3 of them. First, enhancing the strength of the police force and allowing for the specialization of functions to improve their efficiency and professionalism in the force. As the second Administrative Reforms Commission classified, police functioning can be broadly categorized as law and order, which involves public order functions like crowd control, crime investigation, and local policing, which is the day-to-day policing activities that involve constant communication with the society. Other functions, as far as practicable, must be outsourced from the police. Training and recruitment needs to be completely revamped. For all specialized functions like crime investigation, recruitment must only begin at the ASI rank. Eventually, there should be no recruitment at the constable level. As proposed by the Padmanabhaya Committee, a professional degree in policing may be designed similar to the defense forces, and promotions should be linked to performance. As the coordination between the different functionaries of the criminal justice system, such as the courts, the police, and prosecutors, is critical to justice delivery, we need joint training programs to allow better synergy between these organs. Most importantly, training needs to focus on sensitizing the police to the needs of the citizens, especially the weaker sections of society. To further improve the bond between police and the people they serve, community policing needs to be institutionalized. The UK, which places community at the heart of their policing strategy, has achieved better policing outcomes and improved public police relations. Even in India, states like Kerala and Himachal Pradesh that have adopted community policing are rated highest in satisfaction with police among citizens in the Status of Policing in India Report 2008. This is not a coincidence. Community policing not only improves trust in police, but as the broken windows theory suggests, a sense of safety and order in the society acts as a deterrent to crime. Therefore, we propose that police must be embedded within the community as local residents in rural areas and mobile beat cops in urban areas, with great emphasis on communication and collaboration with the community. If we have one such police officer per every 5,000 people, we would need to deploy about 5% of the force in this function. This wouldn't mean depleting the force, rather redeploying within an integrated force to achieve better outcomes. Not only would this improve the image of the police, but with their local expertise, community police can play a proactive role in crime control. Our highly experienced panelists who have been active voices for police reform will explore each of these areas in greater detail. The chair, Shri K. Padmanabhaya, is going to take over now. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shruti. Good morning to my co-panelists, very distinguished co-panelists, and good morning to the FDR team, and especially Shruti, and to all the participants in this particular program. Now, I must congratulate and thank Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, the soul of the FDR, for having organized this most important dialogue on the police. Now, the topic given to us, this particular panel, is what should be the addressing the challenges of modern policing. Now, as you are aware, there are 3 other sessions. One is about the prosecution, one is about rule of law and all that. So I don't want to go into those areas. I would confine to the question here, addressing the challenges of modern policing. But before that, I want to make some general comments about dealing with the police. First thing is, the police is the most visible face of the state. It is the coercive arm of the state and is empowered to use force. No other civil service is empowered to do that. But policing is an unenviable job, and I wouldn't certainly like to take a policing job because it's absolutely tough. I would elaborate on that. Now, the point is, it is supposed to enforce the rule of law. What happens, why the police is so important in our polity is, If we cannot enforce the rule of law, then a state becomes a failed state. There have been many cases. But on the other hand, if the police use is oppressive, then it becomes a police state. So you have to play in between these two, between a failed state and a sort of police state. Now, there are certain difficulties in dealing with the police, as I said. One is policing is a state subject, and there are huge variations in its performance from state to state. So hence, any generalization becomes very dangerous. We can't say that they are not performing well, means which police is not performing well. Now, the second problem in dealing with police is not much of information is available about working of the police departments in various states to the public. Normally, various governmental departments, what they do is they publish an annual report where the entire working of the department is presented. It is laid in the house of the legislature, discussed, and all those things. But I don't see any annual reports of the police departments. There is some information available on their websites. Some partial information is available about crime and all those things. The third one is talking about the information. There are two bodies. One is the NCRB, that is the National Crime Records Bureau, and the other is BP&R&D, that is the Bureau of Police Research and Development. They do publish a lot of data, but it is highly aggregated data and mostly statistical data. Now, you can't use the statistics there. As somebody said, statistics can hide a sort of crucial thing. It can give you a sort of lopsided view, So that is not very useful. Then, any assessment of the police, therefore, is bound to be complex and even disputed. But the most important problem in dealing with the police is we can't expect a democratic ethos from the police when the government and other wings of the government and the society as such do not value such ethos, democratic ethos. So it would be very unfair to ask the police to follow the democratic ethos when elsewhere it is lacking, because the entire system has to work once. Now, as I said, I would confine myself to the challenges of modern policing. But when we talk of modern policing, what is modern policing? Is having a sort of fleet of the latest cars, the communication equipment, and the computers. And is this modern policing, or there is something beyond that in the modern policing? And modern policing has different levels depending on the country. What is modern policing in England may not be the same as modern policing in India. So from the Indian conditions, what exactly is the mandate, vision, and ethos of a modern police? To view that, I have made a slide presentation. So if somebody from FDR can present the first slide. Yeah, what should be the mandate, vision, and ethos of a modern police in India? One is to uphold the rule of law. Two, uphold the preamble of the Constitution of a secular republic and to promote fraternity among all citizens, assuring the dignity of the individual while discharging the police duties. The third is to provide protection to common citizens, them with dignity and without of status or gender while maintaining peace in the society. Next one is, I gave an example. The College of Policing in UK describes a police officer's job in these terms, quote, to reduce crime and fear of crime and to promote confidence amongst the local people that the police understand and are prepared to deal with issues that matter most to them. I think that has been the motto of the British police for quite some time. Now, again in the Indian context, I think the next one, please. The police should take note of the broader context of churning our society is witnessing, such as new claims by backward classes, new aspirations and tensions generated by shifts in economic policies and challenging pre-existing hierarchies. Just to give one example about these hierarchies, women challenging the patriarchal role and the freedom to love, some of these things, Next is, take note of the IT and internet revolution and the social media ever increasing manner, and assess their impact on the changing crime profile, Last one, in short, to reshape itself into a people-friendly police service. The preamble of the Kerala Police Act is worth looking at. Next slide, please. Now, I have given here an overview of the police reforms and at modernization. Reforms not for their sake, but at modernization. But the context is very important. When the British were ruling India, the first war of independence took place in 1857. Now, within a few years, in the aftermath of that, the first Indian Police Act was introduced in 1861. That is about 4 years later. And what was the motto of that law? To maintain law and order by whichever way. It didn't prescribe a particular way in which you should do. The democratic ethos about which I talked was not there. You maintain law and order by whatever method. And you know what has happened, people who are familiar with the freedom movement. This police act served the British in India for 86 years, till 1947. And the same law was used by the Indian Republic for another 64 years. What is the 64 years? The 64 years end at 2011, when the first modern police act was enacted by some of the states, including Kerala. Maybe a year or two that way. So the point is 86 years of the British rule and 64 years of the independence rule of India, we had the same law, 1861 law. Some words might have been changed here and there. A total of 150 years is that. Now, throughout the period, especially coming from the British period, police is a coercive arm of the law, but is used as a coercive arm of the government of the day and also perceived to be such. This is the problem. The next slide, please. The crux of the reform is to strike a balance between operational autonomy and accountability to the government and to the people. This is the real crux of the problem. The Kerala Police Act, as I mentioned, of 2011 is a beginning of the modern policing, according to me. Other states also have followed, but I make a mention of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand because they also passed new acts which are closest to the model suggested. Next, please. Now, when did this efforts to have a modern policing start? The National Police Commission report came in 1980. They also suggested a new model draft act, but no action has been taken by the government all those years. Then after a lot of fight, the matters went to the Supreme Court because of the intervention by a retired DG of police. And they gave a decision in 2006, mentioning about 7 reforms which can be brought about. But again, no decision was taken. No decision was taken till about 2011. I would come to that. Now, what did the Supreme Court say? They said establish an independent state security commission to see the state does not exercise unwarranted influence or pressure on the police. That is the most important thing. And the commission is supposed to lay down broad policy guidelines and evaluate the performance of the state police. Then they said line functionaries like station house officer, SPs, range and zonal DIGs should have a fixed tenure of 2 years. They should not be changed at the will of the political bosses. Next. Next. Separate investigation and law and order functions. Separate investigation and law and order functions. Create a police establishment board comprising of 5 of the senior most officers to decide on transfers, postings, promotions, etc. of the Deputy Superintendent of Police and below, and to recommend in the cases of above the Deputy Superintendent of Police. This is giving real autonomy to the police to decide the postings and all that, not by interference from above. And create an independent full-time police complaints authority at the district level and state level to inquire into serious cases of misconduct and whose recommendations would be binding on the police. So these are the recommendations of the Supreme Court. Now, there are some more. Next one. No, previous one, please. Previous, yeah. No, previous one. Yeah. Create a National Security Commission to prepare a panel for selection of CPO heads, that is central police organizations, with minimum tenure of 2 years. Now, unfortunately, the Supreme Court, what it said was, before you enact the Model Police Act, these should be taken as guidelines, They will be operative till such time as a new police act is formed. But some government, most of the governments took advantage of these observations, the last observation, and dilly-dallied in passing the acts. Next one, please. I just wanted to mention, had government acted in those days, we could have had a modern police force by this time, much earlier. Then I summed up the position as on 2016. What has happened was only Kerala had come, other states also have adopted, but with a lot of defects. But only Kerala had come closest to the Model Act suggested. Now, I have quoted from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, C.J. Kehar, on March 2017, in the case of Ashwini Kumar Upadhyaya versus the Union and the states. What happened is, the petitioner there, the DG of police from retired police, went to the Supreme Court. He said Supreme Court should monitor the implementation of the police reforms because they are not being undertaken. Do you know what the judge said? He said, dismiss. He said, no, we cannot do it. He said, I quote, police reforms are going on and on. Nobody listens to our orders. This is the frustration of the Supreme Court too. Now, this sums up the implementation of the police reforms. Now, one question which needs to be asked, one of my distinguished panelists has raised that, who is responsible for this non-implementation? Is it only the police or is it somebody else? In my judgment, I think the political element is certainly there. I mean, the reluctance to part with power. Who would lose their authority and give autonomy to the police? But at the same time, a lot of blame has to be taken by the senior leadership in the police force. If the DG of police had willed, he could have done a lot of things. If Kerala had done, why can't if UP had, Uttarakhand has done, Himachal Pradesh had done, why can't other states do it? Next one. Now, I wanted to mention something about the police working. Now, I have a lot of sympathy for the police working. I think it's one of the worst living conditions, and working conditions that the police have. And one more thing I wanted to mention is, the sympathy is because the police is the only organization in the government where people get killed in the discharge while performing their duties. I have some data which is slightly old. I think in 2000 year or so, about 821 police officers were killed while discharging their duty. About 3,375 were injured. About 214 committed suicide relating to work pressures and all that. Now, with that one, what is a police officer required to do? What is his workload? I would just mention here, head constables and sub-inspectors are the first level of investigators in the police, this one. In fact, there is a classification done saying supervising officers, the superior supervising officers, the intermediate supervising officers, and the field officers. Field officers ends with head constables and ASIs. Now, sub-inspectors and inspectors and DYSPs are told as the first level of supervisory officers. And above SP, up to the DG, is the superior supervising officers. So the real, what should I say, the investigating power or the policing power is with the lower ranks up to the sub-inspector or ASI or whatever it is. But they constitute the constables and head constables, I'm not even included sub-inspectors, 84.5% of the total police force constitutes constables and head constables. Now, what is this head constable or a SI required to know? He has to know something about the Indian Penal Code because all the offenses are under that. He should know Criminal Procedure Code, what is the procedure, Indian Evidence Act, what evidence should be collected, then the Police Act of the state, Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, etc. And special laws like UAPA Act, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, Arms Act, Explosives Act, etc., etc., and also local laws. Do you know how many of them are there? There are 66 of them, the local and special laws. In addition to this, he is supposed to know the scientific aids for investigation, the basics of IT, computerization, and the forensic science, and all these things. Next, please. Next. Hello. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm talking of a good and effective policeman. What is he required to do? He has to be a bit of a sociologist. Why? Because he should know the pressures in the society, how the society is behaving, the dynamics of the society and all that. A psychologist, you should know the criminal mind, what are the people thinking when they are giving evidence, witnesses and all that. He has to be a good communicator because he has to talk to the people, interrogate them and all. He has to be a quick decision maker. You can't wait. I would think over it and come back and do something. He has to act one with courage. Next, please. And he has to have a good moral fiber. Otherwise, he would be tempted with the amount of power that he has. And he has to be a good comprehender of the situation. If a law and order situation is there, he should comprehend the various aspects of the situation and a basic legal understanding to apply all these things. But I don't think there is a proper realization of this, the responsibility of the lower police officers by the government. And I also see that there is a disconnect between the upper and lower echelons of the police force. Next one, please. Now, where is the problem? The problem, I think, is the crux of the problem is in the recruitment and training. And training includes retraining. Now, in India, this is very important. The qualification for a constable is the 12th standard. And for an SI, it is graduation with 9 months of training post the selection. Now, compare it with UK. In the last 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, there are 3 routes of recruitment for a constable because recruitment takes place only at the constable level. Except in recent years, they have been recruiting at the superintendent level, but otherwise, it is only at the constable level. What are the 3 routes? The first route is pre-join 3-year degree in professional policing offered by 34 universities based on a national curriculum for police constables. There is a national curriculum. Many universities have adopted it, and it's a pre-joining this one. It is a 3-year degree called professional policing. But the degree does not guarantee recruitment. You may have the degree, but after facing the examinations and all that, if one is selected, then as a probationary police officer, he has to continue to be on 2 years. Next, please. What is the second route? No prior degree is required, but A levels, a high degree of A levels are required. And once selected, he has to undergo a 3-year apprentice training. And again, he is given a degree. The degree called Police Constable Degree Apprenticeship, PCDA, is awarded in collaboration with a collaborating university. And an independent assessor is to certify successful completion of the probation. What is the route 3? Any degree holder, if selected, he has to undergo a 2-year probation. Then he gets a degree diploma in professional policing practice. Now, I think we take our policeman raw. There is no training at all. And 9 months training, what would he do? He would be led by somebody else, either superior or somebody else, or acts according to his, whatever is the best judgment he could muster. Now, next slide, please. I think so. What we require is I think you are jumping many, There are major area of reforms. Yeah, that is the one. That's the one. First of all, now they have done a mission statement has to be there for each state police as what exactly is the police required to do. Now, I would refer to the preamble to the Kerala Police Act, I think, which you should read. It's very interesting. Recruitment, catch them young, I have said. Training and retraining. This retraining. Now, you might train all these people and take the people over a course of the next 10 years. But what do you do with the existing ones? Unless they are retrained and they would pass on their own, techniques and methods to the younger people also. Police behavior, which is very important. How do you improve this? I have a little more to say thereafter. Police administration. They have to do not only career planning, but manpower planning. In the sense, there is rapid growth of urbanization, as somebody referred. There are a lot of migration, immigration, and other things. The smart cities are coming up. So what would be the enhanced requirements of manpower in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? I think all that planning is required. Police infrastructure, basic forensic science, IT, and communications. I think there is a case for a cadre of forensic scientists to be made. In England, they have every district must have a forensic scientist available to the superintendent of police. Next one, please. Politicization and criminalization of the police. That's why the autonomy is being talked about. Control of the over the police, assure them a proper tenure. Police investigation, separation and specialization. Prosecution. One word I have to say. In fact, I found that this is the Achilles heel of the police. What happens is, police complete their investigation, roughshod, half done, some well done, and all that. And when the case goes before the court, it is at that time that a police prosecutor comes into the picture, and he finds some loopholes in that, and then judge finds some loopholes, and the case fails. Why can't these people advise the police at the time of investigation itself? I think, in my judgment, every district superintendent of police must have an advisor in the form of a, prosecutor advising them. Police infrastructure, I had mentioned about forensic scientists that they must have. Then community policing, some reference would be made. In the neighborhood policing, it's called policing teams, safer neighborhood policing teams comprising of 10 to 15 police officers. In UK, for example, out Bush, we can draw quite a lot. Police community support officers are recruited. Community safety accreditation schemes are there. Some of them have been successful, and I think we should do that. I won't talk about militancy and terrorism. These are special aspects of policing. Women and weaker sections, organized crime. I think this is another one. We haven't got our act together about organized crime. What is organized crime? Organized crime is, the basic motive of organized crime is money making, profit making, wealth. They function like a corporate setup. Kidnapping, contract killing, extortion rackets, collection of protection money, land grabbing, land squatting, trading in human organs, trading in nuclear materials, car lifting, many cyber crimes. All these things can be sort of clubbed under this. And another aspect of this policing is organized crime. They are capable of subverting the police. And not only police, the police, judiciary, and all that, the administration. So, Hawala dealership, these are also organized crime. So I think we need special laws for this. Maharashtra has started with what is called the Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act, 1999. In USA, we have what is called RICO Act, US Racketeers, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. I think we need to follow some of those things. Now, there are still, next slide please, I would very quickly go through that. In spite of the fact that the police population ratio is not very good, a large number of unfilled posts of the sanctions are there. 20% of the vacancies of the sanctioned posts at a national level are not filled. Funds for modernization are lapsing due to non-utilization. 50%, 52% of the funds last year given for modernization have not been spent. The issue of non-cognizable cases. There are 120 non-cognizable cases on the IPC. Police have no jurisdiction to take cognizance of these things. They can't investigate unless the court tells them. What do we do with this? Need to improve the investigating skills. At an all India level, 23% of the cases dealt with by the police result in what is called true but insufficient evidence. These, including other categories, what they call final report. That means they're there, but we cannot do anything about it. 32.7% of the cases dealt result in final report. So, but last one I wanted to mention, considerable improvement has taken place in the last 5-10 years. Some young police officers have shown great courage to the extent of facing grave risks to their life. Better media interaction is there. Improved websites have come. Police functions need not be restricted. Advice is they need not be restricted only to police officers and police political bosses. Invite prominent citizens. Let them interact with the police wherever possible. Prominent and informed citizens should be guest faculty at police training schools. I think some of these things would help. Now, ultimately, I wanted to say one thing. What are the core expectations of the people from the police? There are two: effectiveness in crime control and fairness. So, both these things depend on a variety of factors, which I need not go into details for want of time. But I would stop this one here. Each one of my panelists are experts in their own area, and they would talk about this one. I would invite Madam Maya Daruwala to give her sort of presentation. And she is going to speak essentially on the perceptions of the police by the public and the perceptions of the public about the police. She can cover any other subjects she likes to. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, Mr. Jayaprakash, Narayan. We have worked together and apart for too many years. I think the collaboration is now in very much in the to be desired. Mr. Padmanabhaya, you have given such a comprehensive overview about the things that need to be done, and also the trajectory of reform, or I should say the lack of reform that we are continuously suffering through. So I today will put forward something that most of the public who are listening today, we have several dozen participants who already know a lot about this, but what I'm trying to give you is a researched view. It's not gossip, it's not anecdotal. It is a researched view done by my colleagues at A Common Cause and CSDS, which 1 year they looked at the status of policing in the status of policing in India, and looked at what did the public think of the police and what did the police then think about the public. And so they have statistics, as Mr. Padmanabhaya said. The policing and how it is viewed is divided up into states. But what I'm going to give you this morning is just a general overview. I think the importance of what I'm going to say it's ameliorated by the fact that you know most of this in your hearts or in your minds, or because of public media perceptions. But it directs you, if you listen carefully. When I say you, I mean policymakers and people who have the charge of the police, supervisors. It directs you from denial to development for change, for the vision that Mr. Padmanabhaya has hinted at, and which you will hear other participants. I think that I will come to various of those, but at the moment, I will go through exactly what they are saying through their research. Overall, how does the average citizen see the police? He sees the police as something to fear. Now, you would say, why should they see the police something to fear? If the police are an essential attribute of the state and rule of law, then it should be like a fire station, or like your local PDS shop. It's a service. it's to be provided, it's paid for by the public. So why should you start from the premise of fear? But it is there. They see the police as having too much authority and abusing it too often. But at the same time, a great many people say, this is whether they have approached the police or not, a great many people say, well, it is satisfactory. Their behavior or their performance, not their behavior, and you should separate this from the performance, their performance is okay. Given the circumstances, it's okay. But I would say that the threshold or the expectation of what a policeman should do when he is responding to a public complaints, to a person's complaint, is very low. The top reasons for the dissatisfaction with the police are a refusal to help, asking for a bribe, abusive behavior, refusing to file a complaint or put down an FIR. In other words, to take notice that I am in trouble. Will you help me? And the answer is abuse or non-response. That has been a great deal of the complaint.
Complex one.
So you can imagine how much could change if simply at the training stage and throughout their career, and if their supervisors insisted that the police were less abusive in their language and a little bit more understood what was around them and could refer people to other people. You may not always, when you go with a complaint to the police, you may not always want him to react. You may just want him to refer you to somebody, maybe even to a doctor or a psychologist or a childminder or something. Now, if just that much could be done, how much of the policing image could change? The other thing that people don't realize, and this is not from that study, is that the police station itself is a public utility. The public, when they were asked about it, said they would not go to a police station unless it was an emergency. Unless they went with someone, they would certainly not let their child or their wife go, or the women in the family go to the police station alone. That means that you are taking 2/3 of the population and saying, you cannot go to this place because it is far too threatening and we cannot assure you of a response. This is an extremely bad statistic to be living with. And I think that the police leadership should take a great deal of cognizance of this and not provide excuses about structurally it being weak or being under the thumb of some politician. The public must be able to reclaim the police station as a public utility. Interestingly, the perceptions of people who have actually had something to do with the police, and that is about only 15% of the population. Only 15% of the population actually have had anything to do with the police. But among them, there is a level of much higher satisfaction than with people who have just heard from other people how the police behave. However, when it comes down, when you break it down by caste, class, religion, gender, then the poor have a much less positive experience of policing. Women also much less, and different religious categories also differ a great deal. So, then there are issues of bias. If you measure, bias is obvious. We are reading about it every day. It transposes itself or it demonstrates itself in selective policing. A case against one person who may be high profile may be activated immediately, especially if there is political signaling. The second is people who are perhaps locally powerful or powerful in public image may not be acted against, however bad their criminality may be. We have seen it again and again. I don't want to press into it, but if you ask me offline, I could give you 20 cases in a day. So selective policing, which is driven by the sense that this is a political obligation, is what, as Mr. Padmanabhaiya has also signaled, by saying that the police feel that they belong to the regime that is in power at that moment, or if we take out the word regime in power at the moment, it is locally the powerful, the influencers. So this is very much perceived by the public. When you come to women and you're talking to women about policing, especially those who have researched, etc., they will talk to you about the strong strains of patriarchy and paternalism. Now, this paternalism, 1 minute, please, could you hold on a minute? Could you hold on a minute? Sorry. So if you talk to women who have researched these things, they will point to you to what the social milieu says a woman should behave like, or whether her complaint should be heard or not, or what compromises should she make when she has been raped, whether she should marry the rapist or tie a rakhi around him. But she cannot get to the justice that is dispensed by the CRPC, by the criminal code, by the constitution. Therefore, she is never equal before the law because of the attitudes that she encounters when she first starts to talk about her problem. These attitudes are mediated by the sense of patriarchy and paternalism, and because there is no training, there is no amelioration of these attitudes, and these attitudes become embedded in policing rather than the attitudes of constitutional imperative, equality before the law. So you see that. Then you see violence. Now, I think I have little to say about the perception of violence. Violence we see on the video, violence we see on social media, violence we see complained of at the National Human Rights Commission. And beyond saying that I am often horrified and amazed at the ferocity of the violence that I have seen, I cannot say anything more. Now, you cannot tell me, as a police person who is a spokesman for the police, that this violence, this ferocity of violence, is due to somebody in politics telling you to do that. You also cannot say it is because I have bad living conditions. In which case, if that is the excuse, then every downtrodden laborer, every scavenger, everyone who works in terrible conditions should be able to come and beat me up whenever they want. So you cannot correlate these things. These are separate things and they must be tackled separately. And there is no excuse for the excess use of power. I am not talking about proportionate, immediate violence. I am talking about the ferocity of violence. Then, illegality in protection of each other. 1/5 of the respondents said that they felt that the police protected themselves and they had seen police violating the law. Now, this may be a perception, this may be completely wrong, but until police become much more transparent, not about disciplining, you didn't wear a belt, you haven't got your hat on, you were late for duty. We're not talking about that. We are talking about severe criminality. And where there has been severe criminality, we are seeing the police protected. Transfer may not be a punishment, but it is an easy out which does not satisfy the public and certainly does no good to the police to have bad apples continue among them, because it is a signal to the good police that they will have no incentive to be good. Non-response, I have already spoken about. Not filing FIRs, not explaining why a complaint cannot be cognizable. All of these things have come to hold the police in low esteem because they cannot be first responders. Corruption, 1/3 of the people said that they had paid a bribe. Now, if they have paid a bribe, why don't we just go in for private policing? This is a taxpayer service. And if you cannot say that they are paid lowly and therefore they can take a bribe, if you say that, then you are condoning something that is an obstruction to justice. And that is something to be aware of. So basically, trust in police is low. Now, what do the police think about the public? And what do the police think about themselves? Mr. Padmanabhaya talked about police being the machinery that upholds the rule of law. But indeed, the rank and file do not, and also the supervisory classes, do not see rule of law as being a premier function of the police. There is very little awareness, knowledge about the rule of law. What does it mean? I had to be a law student for 4 years before it became embedded in every pore of mine. So how do you expect people who come from a social milieu that is a different lived reality to believe and understand and respond to and uphold the rule of law when you do not teach them and when you don't differentiate them from that? Then the police see themselves as a force. They do not see themselves as a service. They see themselves, the supervisory classes see themselves as being supervisors of a disciplined and obedient force. Those beneath them, the 84% that Mr. Padmanabhaya spoke about, see themselves as being regimented, not being given the chance to have innovation or initiative. They see themselves as bullied, and they see themselves as not rewarded. And this is something that has got nothing to do with being subservient to political masters. It is something to do with the supervisory classes. That is why I believe, I agree so much with Mr. Padmanabhaya, who says that a great deal of reform, a great deal of repair is with the leadership, and they must ask themselves why they do not go towards it. Not in an individual fashion of being good to somebody as a charity, but being an institutional force to change and embed other things in that force. They see themselves, most policemen who were interviewed, and there were about 15,000 of them interviewed over 22 states, see themselves as an authority over the citizen rather than as a citizen who has special powers to protect others and to protect themselves. So the issue of rights is not central to the understanding of a citizen as being the owner of rights. They acknowledge their own biases. Now, this is very interesting. They acknowledge their own biases because they say quite clearly that besides that the injustice they feel outside, they feel that sorry, I've skipped something. They feel that the minorities within them are unfairly treated, or the minorities feel that they are unfairly treated. They feel that the women among them are given soft jobs, are given favors, have to be tolerated, not accommodated, but tolerated, and that they put up with this because somebody has ordered them to put up with it. So there is no sense of equality. Upper caste police personnel think that ST, SC are more prone to crime, migrants are more prone to crime, women come forth with trivial complaints, Muslims are more prone to crime. Now you can see that these biases fit in with what the public feels about them, and how it plays out when you look at who is in prison. The proportion of ST, SC, poor, and Muslims and other minority categories is far greater incarceration than the population proportion that they have. So I will stop there. I think I have done my 10 minutes, though I have not got the signal, or maybe I missed it. I apologize if I've missed it. So I will leave you with, we know all this. The main thing is, having known all this, having known that it has been there for years and years and years, and that small changes brought about by individuals is not the answer to rule of law type policing, a policing as a service, a policing that is law upholding, a police station that is public. How do we go about changing it? We are talking here today in the hope that we will create more and more public advocates who will help to change this system or pressurize the system to change. But at the moment, we are caught in a vice of poor policing and sad and unhappy citizenry that are struggling for the rule of law, but going in the opposite direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maya. It's a wonderful presentation. Now, may I invite Shri Kamal Kumar. Kamal Kumar was the director of the National Police Academy, the highest training body. Now, he is going to speak about the constraints, problems, and limitations of the police. Over to you, Kamal.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. There's so much of talk about, find the failings and shortcomings of the police. In the common discourse, the public discourse, you keep hearing so much about it. Maya is also just now, my good friend Maya, my co-traveler Maya, she is just now mentioned about what the public feel about the police, all kinds of negative sentiments that public generally have for the police. They're all being discussed quite widely. But what is not being heard much outside the police circles is about the problems and constraints that the police face in performing their onerous tasks. Tasks are onerous, everybody understands. But how are they performing those tasks, under what limitations, under what constraints and all, that's not being discussed. So therefore, I propose to talk about some of those little known aspects of police functioning. But before coming to that, I would like to highlight some essential requisites of a good police service demanded by rule of law. Let me just post. Disabled participant from screen sharing. Please open screen sharing, Sumedha.
Sir, I've enabled it now. You can.
Thank you.
I've enabled it, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. So here, am I audible, sir? Padnarayan sir, am I audible?
You're audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah. So here on this slide, I have mentioned about certain essential requisites that the law and order demands of a good police service. And there's nothing very big about it. That's very commonly understood points. The members of the police force, for a good law and order, for good rule of law maintenance, should be well motivated, and they should be well trained. The service should be well resourced and well equipped. The members must be unquestionably fair and impartial. They should always function without fear or favor. And under all circumstances, they should be totally apolitical. They should shun abuse of power and authority every time. They should be respectful to human rights and also well committed to ethical values. That is what the rule of law demands. Now, the police in India have inherited, talking about the problems and constraints of the police, I would mention the police in India have inherited their structure, their methodologies, their resourcing pattern, everything from their imperial past. Out of sync totally in today's scenario, out of sync with the needs of a vibrant democracy that India is in current situation. The British, as Mr. Padmanabhaya mentioned, alarmed by the mutiny of 1857, they sought to create a police force that would ensure the domination of the Raj and by controlling the population. They also wanted a police force that would involve minimal cost to the exchequer, be it in terms of salary structure, be it in terms of provision of equipment or other wherewithal required for efficient policing. Unfortunately, even after independence, no thought was given to remedy the situation, and therefore those problems and constraints that were given rise to by those situations in the British times, they've been perpetuating all this while. Now, in the meanwhile, growth of democracy and the attendant challenges to policing it was brought about, coupled with factors like population explosion, rapid urbanization, growing cult of violence, etc., have all further exacerbated the situation and the problems much more. Now, to identify the problems in specific terms and constraints in specific terms, let's have a look at the management universe of the police system. The policing, after all, police do not function in a vacuum. They function under a system, under a universe. And you'd find that whether the quality of police is good or bad or indifferent, it's all a function of the different elements of this universe, which you can see on the screen right now, and the interplay of these elements with each other. As we see in the slide here, the human element, namely the police person, is at the very core of the universe of policing that constitutes the most crucial component in the police organization. Now, the next concentric circle represents the behavioral environment or the conditioning environment for the police person. Thereafter comes the circle representing the institution, that is the institution under which the police person functions, whether it's a police station or it's a police circle or a district or whatever, that is the thing. And the next concentric circle represents the institutional environment, that is the conditioning environments for the institution. So the institution and the institutional environment, they provide some kind of they condition the behavioral component of the policing part of it. Now the problems finally we have the boundary environment, and the boundary environment consists of three items. One is police interface with the public. The second one is police interface with politician, and the third one is police interface with the criminal justice system. Now, the problems and constraints that the police face, they encompass practically all the elements of the universe of policing that is represented here. So now let's have a look at the major ones. The problems are plenty, plethora of them. In fact, 10-15 minutes time that's been allotted to us is not enough to talk about all of them. But we'll confine ourselves to the major ones. And we'll also try to broadly identify the remedial measures. So that is that. So the first issue that I would like to touch upon is about human resource. The police, as we all know, and is widely acknowledged, is that the police suffer from acute shortages of manpower. The basic reason for that is that the sanction strength, which was when it was created or when it was sanctioned, it was not based on any scientific yardsticks or any work study. Right. Then you have the problem of huge vacancies. As per the latest BPR&D data on police organizations, for the year 2020, as many as 20.34% of sanctioned posts were lying vacant in the country. Even the sanction strength of the police in India, which works out to 152, just 152 persons, police persons for 1 lakh of population, is far below the United Nations recommended standard of 222 personnel for the same population size. Vacancies make the situation much worse. Now, efficacious augmentation of the sanction strength of workforce is an urgent need, and what alongside is to be done is required is a sincere effort to fill the existing vacancies. The next point is about inadequate diversity in the composition of the police force. The police force or a police service should always represent the community services, but we have tremendous problems about diversity in the composition of our forces. For example, women, who constitute 50% of the population, are represented only to the extent of 10.48% in the police workforce. And that too, there's been a lot of push given to the whole issue in the last 1 decade or so. Otherwise, it used to be 3%, 4%, 5%, and that kind of a thing. Now, many states have provided quota for women now. Some 20%, some have said 30%, some have said 33%, and so on. But merely providing a reservation quota will not do. A 30% quota, even if it's subscribed fully every year, will require an unreasonably long time for achieving the stipulated representation of women in the police force. What we need is a substantial affirmative action to remedy the situation. Some action could be that for some time we could say that this year's all vacancies will be reserved only for women. No other gender would be allowed entry in the police force for this year, next year, or whatever it is. So that is the thing. The next problem comes about training, which is the deficiency in training is our police system's Achilles heel. Inadequate and inefficacious training infrastructure is a major contributory factor, though not the sole one for this state of affairs. Paucity of proficient and motivated faculty is another major problem. One more problem arises because of the acute shortage of workforce in most of the police units. Because of this and because of unceasing pressures of work, the supervisory officers or the district officers, etc., they are not able to spare officers and able to depute them for training programs in training institutions, which would be obviously situated a little far away from their own locations. So there is need to remedy this situation. To remedy this situation, one innovative initiative that was taken by the undivided Andhra Pradesh police under the leadership of Mr. H.J. Dora in early 2000 was that he created district training centers for day-to-day training and for small little training modules. That district training center took care of the situation, and the faculty, etc., was all locally arranged for that. And it was all done under close supervision of the training directorate under the police headquarters. So that is the kind of remedy that can be tried elsewhere as well. Now there is need to augment this training infrastructure and also to incentivize faculty through monetary incentives as well as non-monetary inducements, like, one-rank promotion or early promotion or whatever else one can think of. But most importantly, the training budgets are much too meager. Just 1.13% of the total police budget, as per BPR&D data, needs, is the situation, and that needs substantial augmentation. Then, coming to working conditions. Now, working conditions, first of all, there's a major problem about work overload. There are too many functions and duties assigned to the police. Some of them are mandated by law, but many others have evolved by tradition. A plethora of them would fall in the category of non-core policing functions. The functions such as summons service. For want of time, I won't mention about so many other such services, but there are plethora, there are plenty of them which are non-core policing services and which easily lend themselves to outsourcing. So, like summons service, I mean, there's no need. When this practice was started of summons being served by the police, that was the time when post offices were not there. Now you have not only very efficient postal service, but you also have a lot many courier services and all those things available. There is technology available, there is internet and so on and so forth. So there's no reason why we should perpetuate the summons service thing by the police wasting so much of time of theirs. Then there are many existing business processes in the police which are archaic and which are unproductively time-consuming. These all beckon a thorough re-engineering to make them more lean and more effective. One example of this thing is provided by Hyderabad Police, which about 10, 12 years ago had undertaken a major exercise in this regard, and through business process re-engineering, they had reduced the workload considerably and efficiency had gone up, which was all proved by researches and case studies that were undertaken later. Now, technology is a proven tool for enhancement of efficiency, and it also, at the same time, economizes on manpower. So that has been tried. Many such initiatives have been taken in different jurisdictions. They need to be institutionalized, and they should need to be replicated further in other jurisdictions. But much more needs to be done in other areas which have not been touched upon so far. The next most important hurdle is long and arduous duty hours. The British objective of an economical police force had led to the Indian Police Act of 1861, which Mr. Padnabhaiya talked about. It mandated an always on duty within quotes, work regime for them. This dictum continues to govern the working hour regime for our police personnel even to this day. A study conducted by the National Productivity Council in 1977 had brought out that an average policeman had to be on duty between 10 to 16 hours per day, all 7 days in a week. I conducted a major BPR&D sponsored study recently on a related subject, which study of mine revealed that almost 90% of police station staff presently had to work for more than 8 hours a day. 76.6% of them were on duty for 11 hours or more in a day. 27.7% of them worked for more than 14 hours a day. As if this is not enough, nearly 59% of police station staff were either not able to avail weekly off altogether, or they could avail it at the most once or twice in a month. Not to mention about they're being recalled for duty during their scant and scarce off time to deal with emergency law and order, to deal with VIP visits and many other kinds of work that require urgent attention. There are no festivals and public holidays for police station staff. In fact, they bring extra work for the police personnel. There is no system also of payment of overtime allowance or otherwise compensating the extra hours of duty performed by them. This is a subject on which there is very little awareness. When I talk in different circles about the extra hours of policemen, people tend to think that they must be paid overtime allowance. And when I tell them that there is no system of overtime allowance being paid to them, they always get surprised and that kind of a thing. So that is that. Then inordinately long hours of work, they have obviously a negative impact on the physical and mental health of personnel. Besides, of course, they also adversely affect the family needs and social commitments of the personnel. Overall, it all takes a heavy toll on their morale and motivation, and the resultant frustration manifests itself in offensive conduct and behavior of theirs with the public. This, meets the point which Maya has made, that no senior asks them to be violent with the public they come across. No political leader wants them to be rude, and so on and so forth. So this partly meets that point, Maya. Then augmentation of manpower, coupled with the introduction of shift working, as in vogue in all modern police forces the world over, can remedy the malady, and it awaits, immediate implementation. Next comes the issue of, I think I've gone, my slide has gone, yeah. Next comes the issue of lack of basic facilities in the police stations. As revealed by BPRD data, latest data, as many as 638 police stations, even in today's time, do not have telephones in this country. 143 police stations are bereft from wireless connectivity, which is so very essential for policing, or even mobile phones. 257 police stations are not provided with any vehicles. 1,348 police stations are operating from hired buildings. Many of them are in dilapidated conditions, and many of them do not have adequate accommodation for even minimum requirements. Lack of adequate stationery, other consumables, insufficient availability of funds for petrol, etc., petrol, diesel, etc., inadequate provision for meeting the feeding expenses on suspects and witnesses, and other sundry needs are common problems faced by many, many police stations in many states. Next comes the issue of frequent transfers. Now, frequent transfers have become a bane of police organization. Their frequent transfers are used as a potent tool for political interference by our political masters through exercising again control over individual police personnel. As per VPRD 2020 data, as many as 8,453 SHOs out of a total of 16,955 police stations in the country were transferred in less than 1 year of their posting. Some of them even within 1 month, some of them even within 1 week of their transfer, of their posting. Add to it, those shifted out in less than 2 years, the number becomes as large as 14,915 out of 16,955 police stations in the country. Many of these officers have indeed faced multiple transfers in a year. Answer may lie in internal administrative matters of the police, hijacked by the political leaders of the moment, being strictly restored to the police leadership, which is sought to be done through their judgment by the Supreme Court, through a 2006 judgment in Prakash Singh case by the Supreme Court. Now, scanty promotional prospects are again a major, problem or major constraint. It is no big secret that most police constables in India have generally to contend with only one promotion in their lifetime, if at all. In many cases, they retire without even one rank promotion. Then, this lack of promotion prospect becomes a serious moral and motivational issue, particularly with deserving fellows, deserving among the personnel. They feel frustrated about it or the situation. The government had sought to introduce an assured, so-called assured career progression scheme for not just policemen, but employees in various sectors. But that scheme has not met the requirements. It has not served the motivational need. It might have helped the staff in a monetary manner, monetary aspect, by way of compensating them for lack of promotion. So the present seniority-based promotion, because after all, in a hierarchical organization, you can't go on promoting everybody. So therefore, there has to be some kind of system in which you can, take out the undesirable ones. So right now, what we've done is we've introduced seniority-based system of promotion, which needs to be replaced by merit-based or examination-based system, which was in vogue in the earlier days during the British days. Now, inadequate availability of forensic science support is again a major problem. As per 2020 BPRD data, as per the 2020 BPRD data, there are 32 state FSLs. 29 states have all their FSLs one each, and then there are 3 union territories, Delhi, Puducherry, and Andaman Nicobar Islands. So that makes it 32 state forensic science laboratories. There are 80 regional forensic science laboratories and 418 mobile forensic science laboratories in the country. These numbers are not, they look big, but they are hardly adequate, given the large number of criminal cases the police have to deal with. As per the NCRB publication Crime in India 2019, the police had investigated 32.26 lakh IPC cases, in addition to 19.30 lakh of cases under special and local laws, totaling overall to 51.56 lakh cases. For these many cases, these small numbers of regional and mobile laboratories are not adequate. They need to be enhanced. Then, most of the forensic science laboratories, whether it's state laboratories or regional laboratories, etc., they are ill-equipped and they're ill-staffed. They suffer from adequate sanction strength, and sanction strength itself is inadequate, and the problem is compounded by huge vacancies that are existing. Many of the available scientific staff are not trained adequately. Many of the equipments procured under with the funds under Modernization of Police Forces scheme of the Government of India or under state government grants, they soon become unserviceable because there is no fund available for providing annual maintenance contracts in many cases. In many other cases, procurement of consumables has been a problem, and therefore the equipment has come to be unserviceable. There are non-availability of investigation kits in the police station. That's a very important point. Non-availability of investigation kits for different types of cases, for different kinds of cases in the police station is a major impediment about lack of application of adequate application of forensic science. So inadequate orientation training of the police officers in all police stations, as well as provision of the investigation kit of the police station will be an important thing. Then coming to budgetary constraints, that's a very important constraint. Budgetary constraints, the budgets in police, they are marked by highly inadequate allocations. Even essential expenditures, as I mentioned, on items like stationery, petrol, diesel, etc., feeding expenses, even to those relating to investigation, are not adequately taken care of. As per 2020 BPRD data, the expenditure in policing in the country as a whole accounted for only 3.26% of the budget of all states put together. Now, spending on policing by modern countries is much, much higher. For instance, the United States spends $340 per person per year for public policing. The overall spending on police accounts for 9.2% of all local government spending, as against 3.26 in our case. The problem about defective budgeting lies in the top-down approach in budget formulation, and it should be vice versa. It should be bottom to up approach is actually the other way about. Now, coming to taking care of these problems, taking care of these deficiencies and constraints, as I pointed out in slides after slide, including augmentation of manpower, would involve extra cost, obviously, but we must now get over the reluctance to invest in good policing. After all, efficient policing is not just an essential requirement for peace and security for our people, but is also a key ingredient of economic development, besides being a major contributor to national security. The positive effects of the investment will more than compensate the cost of a well-resourced police organization. We must realize the sooner we do it, the better. Now, the last slide that I have, last couple of slides, is illegitimate extraneous interference. This has a direct negative impact on the quality of policing, and it will become a serious problem plaguing the police functioning. Interference is rampant in transfer postings, though it also extends to matters like recruitment, promotion, disciplinary proceedings, etc., etc. Often, even in matters relating to crime investigation and other myriad law enforcement functions, there is, functions like whom to arrest, when to arrest, whom to search, whom to investigate, whom not to investigate, all this. So all these things are interfered with and all that. Now, as I said, it causes a serious dent on police's operational freedom in law enforcement. beneficiary officers, because of this interference, they feel beholden to their political masters to follow their dictates in all the matters that they interfere in. And it's a big challenge to discipline and chain of command in the police organization, which is all so very essential for a uniformed organization. The problem arises, as Maya would agree with me, the problem arises about the misinterpretation of the term superintendents by the political masters as has been used in the Police Act. This problem was thought to be taken care of in the Model Police Act 2006 and in the revised version of 2015. I and Maya both happen to be in the bodies that were elaborating these two acts. Now, the final slide is about what needs to be done. Now, the problems and constraints that I have listed out, and there are many more which have not been covered because of paucity of time, they are seriously impinging upon police efficiency and effectiveness. Now, political and bureaucratic leadership is indifferent because they're happy with the status quo. They seem to be at least happy with the status quo. But citizenry has enormous stakes in good policing, and luckily, people's power is a potent weapon in a democracy. People's role is very, very significant in goading political masters into action in this regard. So, but there is need for promoting awareness on need for change and what to change and how to change. All these things need to be brought out. For this, educating political leaders is important. What needs to be emphasized on them is about the importance of good policing from political perspective as well. Political leaders have a huge stake in good policing, as Jayaprakash Narayan had mentioned in his presentation. So that has to be done. PILs can also help to an extent. So wherever it's required and necessary, PILs can also be filed. There are so many actions, but what is needed is public must get involved and public must emphasize on the political leadership that these changes are necessary for a modern democracy. And I'll stop here. Thank you very much. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or clarify any doubts that anyone may have. Thank you so much.
Kamal Kumar, I think the next speaker is, one second, Jacob Saab, Jacob knows. He was the former Director General of Kerala. He played a great role in sort of doing the Model Act, the Kerala 2011 Act. What impressed me most about Kerala is not only the contents of the Act, but how the Act was passed. There was a series of discussions at various levels, district level, taluka level, village level, and all that. And I'm sure he would be able to tell more. So kindly take over, Jacob Saab.
Thank you very much, sir. I hope I am audible.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, sir. This my time is very, very short, and therefore I'll confine myself to the points. First of all, I am in total agreement with what Mr. Padmanabhaya has said in his opening remarks, with Ms. Maya Darubala, as well as with Mr. Kamal Kumar, as well as with the points which were highlighted here in the initial presentation. So I will not try to explain or repeat any of those points because I am in full agreement with all of them. But I will just start off from a point which Maya mentioned. That was about policing, which is fear-inducing, which is what the word she used was ferocious. So fear-based, ferocious policing, that is what divides the people from the police. That is the reason for the disconnect. And therefore, if police reform is to be meaningful, the steps of reform that we take must be able to reform that cutting edge at the police station level where people seek police help for their security needs. As Maya said, women do not go to the police station, children do not go to the police station. that keeps 75% of our population out of the police station. So this is the situation. Now, if not fear, what can be the basis of policing? Many of us believe that if you frighten everybody, then everybody will obey the law. So fear came to be the basis of law enforcement because of that concern. But if not fear, what else? So Kerala tried to answer that question and stipulate that cooperation can be the basis of police enforcement. Cooperation with the people. Now, this is not a new point discovered by us. It is enshrined in Robert Peel's principles of 1829 itself. Cooperation is essential for police efficiency. And the word friendliness. Now, when we first started mentioning the word friendliness in late 90s, it evoked a smile. Now, how can police be friendly? Friendliness is soft policing. A friendly police is a soft police. So you have to be very, very ferocious. You have to be forbidding. A policeman with a scowl is much better than a policeman with a smile. This was the attitude. But we believed that if police and people are friends, given that hardly 1% or lesser elements of the population are professional criminals, with that friendliness, we will be cooperation of the people in controlling crime as well as to maintain law and order. So it is on that premise that we started off. But there is a difficulty. Friendliness of the police with the people can pay dividends only if the people are police friendly. So we come to the ancient chicken and egg problem. Which came first, egg or the chicken? Which should come first? Friendliness of the police or friendliness of the people? Should the people be friendly with the police first, or should the police be friendly with the people first? So this was a real question, and we decided to answer. The police must make a determined effort to become friendly with the people, because it is the police who have to initiate this process of friendliness, and it is police who must take the initiative to resolve the trust deficit. We started on this journey. We have miles to go, but the journey has started. And I would like to share with you some of the milestones in that journey. Before I describe what has happened, I'll briefly narrate the methodology we adopted for advocating, actualizing, and implementing the police-friendly policing process, of which community policing forms a very, very important part. How we went about doing it. It is not as if everybody stood up and clapped their hands and welcomed community policing, people-friendly policing. Many people were against it. In fact, if you go through the Kerala Assembly proceedings in year 2000 February, many people expressed great suspicion behind the move of the police to be suddenly friendly to the people. This is fraught with great danger. That is, many MLAs actually spoke in the assembly like that. So there was a lot of suspicion. The air of suspicion about police activity is so ingrained in the community that even police saying that we want to be friendly is viewed with suspicion. But suddenly a tiger, if it says I'm a lamb, people will be suspicious. It is that kind of attitude. But we were able to sustain this trust, and once in 2001, 2002, when Mr. A.K. Antony became the Chief Minister of Kerala, he took a very decisive step, and unbelievably, in fact, it sounds impossible now, he ordered that no politician should interfere in a police station functioning. Now, this was a real objective, really implemented, but this led to a big debate about the quality of police performance. Many people said that because the politicians stopped going to the police station, the police started acting on their own. And they were as fearsome, as corrupt, as ferocious as ever. The police did not change simply because politicians stopped coming to the police station or influencing that. So that started a chain reaction. Finally, Justice Katie Thomas and two senior officers were appointed as a committee to look into police performance. This started a big debate, and we, a small group of officers, also jumped into the bandwagon, and we were able to postulate before the public that we need reform. And several things, many of the things that were stated here, this was debated and discussed. These discussions took place with political leaders, with civil society, with media, with non-governmental organizations, other government departments, cultural leaders, even religious leaders. All were party to this discussion. And therefore, a consensus emerged in Kerala polity with regard to the need for reform. It was not something imposed from above, but a discussion in the general media that police should be impartial, rule of law should be upheld, police instrumentalities, police systems must subserve this purpose. So we also gave shape to a community policing system in which people can be approached by the police. Police will visit people in their homes. People can go to the police station. People's committees will be formed. These committees will debate security priorities, and police will implement those security priorities. Such systems we thought of. This was discussed also. This system also provided for encouraging, which Maya mentioned, encouraging junior officers to show initiative at local levels with regard to community policing initiatives, because the need for security in every locality is different. The form in which the delivery of security is decided is different in each locality. And therefore, that gives a lot of scope for subordinate officers to show their initiative. Then, the systems that we proposed was not a fault-finding system, but it was supposed to improve the experience of policing by every stakeholder, whether it be the policeman, whether it be the member of the public, whether it was women or children. Every stakeholder should have a better experience of policing. And also we were particular that the entire program, whatever we did, was governmental in nature, that it took place under the aegis of the government. It was not supposed to be an individual initiative, a particular officer, a particularly brilliant officer doing something brilliant. That was not the color given to it. It was given as a departmental, governmental objective to achieve certain purpose. And this governmental objective, because it was shared with the opposition, discussed with the opposition, it was not treated as a partisan initiative. Also, before we started our community policing project as a whole, all over the state, now it extends to all the state. We started way back in 2007, 2008. It was just started with just a small group of police stations, just 20 police stations in Kerala, covering just 1% of Kerala's population. But there we did it well and gradually extended from 20 to 40, 40 to 80, 80 to 100, like that. So today, in 2017, the present chief minister, he's the fourth chief minister after that, the fourth home minister after that, he extended it after 12 years to the entire Kerala. So this is not only that, as Mr. Padmanabhan sir kindly mentioned, even the associated laws of Kerala were changed to accommodate community policing. Community policing was made a statutory thing. And therefore, and this changes in laws, that also took place, not because some individual suggested it, but as Mr. Padmanabhan said, it was widely debated from village level to the assembly level, at every level, spread over a period of 4 years. The draft was prepared in 2007. It was enacted in 2011. So this was a very, very, very elaborate process. So this was the process adopted for advocating a system of change within the police. It was aimed at changing the experience of the public, the citizen, the women, the children at the police station level. I will now I will now briefly mention what all things that we have done in the course of these 15 or 20 years, half of which I've been out of service, but I'm happy that things are even now going on. So first of all, our stress was getting the cooperation of the community in prevention of crime, as well as in instilling a sense of security. As Mr. Padmanabhan said, fear of crime. Fear of crime, fighting fear of crime, fighting insecurity, addressing traffic safety, drug abuse, problems of children, insecurity in school neighborhoods, domestic violence, rehabilitation of victims of crime, security of crime, security of women. All this was the purpose of the community policing initiative, because these are all needs of the public at every level. And therefore, when we cooperate with them, ask them to suggest remedial measures, they are enthusiastic, because these are problems which affect them daily, every day, in an intense manner. These are actual problems. Second thing was our approach that policemen should not be strangers to the community. It might think, many people think it will be very, very, very basic thing. But we must know that in large parts of India, policemen are deliberately made strangers to the community. For example, in Mr. Rai's UP, you are not allowed even to work in your own district. But in Kerala, policemen are allowed to work in their own, in a place where their homes are situated. So why should policemen be taken away from their homes and asked to work in distant places among strangers? So this is a fundamental question. In England, in New York, in any other modern democracy, policemen belong to the localities where they serve. They are part of the community. But however, in India, because of our colonial tradition, we somehow insist that policemen should belong to areas as distant from the people. So policemen should not be strangers to the community, because policing and development of trust in policing depends upon mutual knowledge and mutual trust. This will come only if policemen are not strangers. Then again, we did not invent any new system for community policing. We just modified the existing beat patrolling system. The notable change that we made was that whereas in normal beat patrolling, one day one policeman goes on a beat, next day some other policeman goes on a beat. We simply changed it to say that if a beat is there, that beat area will be served by one policeman over a period of 2 or 3 years. So that at the end of 6 months, he will know everybody in the beat. Also, we insisted that the policeman who goes on the beat, he should not merely walk on the streets. He should also go and visit people in their houses. So that in 6 months, the beat policeman knows at least individually or collectively every family in that particular area. So this is very important for building up trust and mutual familiarity, so that they feel free to confide things in the policeman or approach the policeman whenever they are in trouble. So this is one thing. Then again, the priorities of police activity in a particular area. It is not decided by the DGP of the state, the Superintendent of Police of the district, or even by the SHO. The priority is identified by the Community Policing Liaison Committee for every police station, where they identify major problems in this area. And these are the things which we should take up with police help. And police should help us in doing this. So these identified activities, identified priorities are implemented under police supervision and police help by the people through various methodologies. Now, some of the activities included within the scope of community policing were identification of strangers and new residents in the area, patrolling in a crime prevalent areas, ensuring the safety of senior citizens. Kerala has got a 15% senior citizen population major problem, prevention of juvenile delinquency, establishment of counseling centers for family problems, alcoholism, etc., road safety and better traffic control, safe and healthy environment around schools, educational institutions, creating awareness among women weaker sections on their legal rights, disaster management, first aid, epidemic control, anti-narcotic action plans, vigilance against cyber crimes, financial crimes. These are new types of crimes, but people do not know how to protect themselves. Implementation of security plans like camera systems. Now today there are almost 1 million cameras are there in Kerala. When we started, there was not even one. So security plans like camera system, alert system, done by the local community itself. Defense of environment, environmental crimes, mobilizing community against things like pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution, etc. Support for victims. These are the kind of activities which we take up in community policing. You will also notice that most of these activities are outside the pale of force-based, fear-inducing, ferocious policing. Policing can achieve any of these things which I have listed out. And another thing we stressed was harnessing technology for neighborhood security. We also, community policing in Kerala has branched off to cyberspace also. Because Kerala has now started a unique project because so many crimes are committed in cyberspace. And conventional policing is absolutely fails. There is no, you cannot wield a lathi in cyberspace. So, nor can you fire a gun in cyberspace. So, conventional police fails in preventing crimes in cyberspace. So, we have now formed, after I retired, some police officers have taken the initiative and they have formed what is known as a cyber DAW. It is a community policing by netizens who notice crime in cyberspace and report it to the police, and therefore proactive policing action is done to prevent fraudulent and criminal activity in cyberspace itself. And generally what we found was that the entire process of community policing initiative of moving with the people, of being police friendly, being people friendly, has helped policemen to change their perspective, to improve their own self-perception. The community policing initiative had highly positive effects on the personalities of policemen and their professional abilities, because it has resulted in greater self-esteem, reduction of stress, and probably lesser workload because of the result, as a result of community policing. Because when you get cooperation from the people, policing becomes one of the easiest jobs. That if you can get the respect and get the cooperation like that. Now, community policing, community was not the only thing that we took up under people-friendly policing schemes. There were several associated projects about which I mentioned and then close. One, it was a total package of people friendliness, of making police accessible, policing consultative, and policing participative. It extended to other things other than the beat system and the community liaison group system. We enacted in the law for the first time for any police force in India, we enacted the rights of the citizen at the police station. Our Police Act contains a chapter on the rights of the citizen at the police station, because now the average citizen in India is always in a doubt whether he has got any rights in the police station. So we solved this problem by enshrining some rights of the citizen at the police station, about which I have no time to read it out. It's in the Kerala Police Act section 6 gives that. We also gave the public the right to video or audio tape any police action. This is a very, 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 very important right for the public. Now, this is in the current scenario, it is under great debate. A police action can be videotaped or audio taped by the public, or if it is in a private space, by the private citizen in charge there. Then we also gave the citizen the right to know the reason for adverse action by the police. Reason for adverse action by the police. We have also enacted accountability mechanisms at the state level, district level. Also, we are the first police force in India, way back in the first half of the first decade of the 21st century. We ensured that there are women posted in every police station in Kerala. There are 500 police stations. And in each of these police stations, women police are present so that women and children can access the police station at any point of time. We also started several associated schemes, because finally the change that we visualize, the change what we need is cultural in the police-public interface. Public should change, police also should change. That is cultural. And therefore, culture change can come only if we concentrate on the children. So we started three significant initiatives. One is a student police cadet scheme, about which we can discuss for another 1 hour if you want. But I just mentioned it's a personality development scheme. It is not a group of students doing police work. It's a scheme run by the police for improving the civic sense and civic responsibility of students. It is now adopted nationally. Government of India has adopted it nationally, and the present Home Minister unveiled the national model 2 years back. So it's a student police cadet scheme. Now in Kerala, there are 2 lakh children enrolled under the scheme, and it's a great boost for police public image. We also have school protection groups. Now, almost 5,000 school protection groups are there in Kerala, all over Kerala. That is, schools need protection from narcotics, from drugs, from traffic safety, from obscenity, obscene publications, so many things. Schools need protection. And therefore, this protection is given by the community around the school, mobilized by the sub-inspector, and under his guidance and protection, the school protection group of the community protects the school from outside undesirable influences. We also have started turning our regular police stations into child-friendly police stations. In the last 5 years, 85 police stations of Kerala have been made child-friendly. If a child does not feel friendly at a police station, there's no meaning in citizenship. A child should be able to approach a police station and being there. So we have made them child-friendly police stations. There is a lot of criticism saying that policing is not child's play. But now that initial criticism has gone. Now every MLA, every people's representative, they want their own police stations made child-friendly. It has become popular. The children going to police station was considered a great. Why should children go to the police station? Now, police station must be made a place where children feel at ease, where they can go and where they can represent their trouble. If a child who is molested, if a child who is astray, who cannot find his way back home, the first institution that he should think of is the police station, and he should be motivated to go there. We also had a very big coastal security vigilance sting dominated by fishermen, which is a great success, which is even now continuing. After the scheme has started, there has not been a single riot, communal riot or anti-police riot across the 600-kilometer coastal stretch of Kerala. This was started in 2010 in right earnest. I'm speaking after 11 years. Otherwise, every year there is 1 or 2 police firings along the coastal areas. Now that has totally stopped. We also interacted with the police public in the social media. The Kerala Police Facebook page, started in 2011, is now the world's biggest police FP page. It has got 1.5 million followers, and its interactions, thousands of interactions take place every day. Negative comments, positive comments, responses, all this fill the social media space, and we are able to interact with them. And then also inside the police stations, we made reception desks in every police station where people are received. They have a right to be received. Then Kerala is the only state where, if you take the total number of strength of the police force, more than 50% of the police force of Kerala are in the police station. In the other states, they are under the armed police constabulary or in the armed reserve or in some other special unit. Here, we have managed, because the police work is the most important work and community is the focus of policing, and therefore maximum police strength of the state should be deployed in the police station to be serving the community. Then also we have given internet connectivity to all police stations in 2009 itself. We have given mobile police connectivity to police constables in 2009 itself. We have put cameras, because third degree and torture cannot coexist with people-friendly policing. To prevent that, to show our determination that we are against it, we put cameras in every lockup in Kerala. So we have also, as Mr. Kamal Kumar has suggested, we have gone in a great big way for technological intervention in enforcement of law. This also can happen. People-friendly policing can happen only if policemen also benefit from people-friendly policing. So we have also concentrated in improving the quality of personnel. The dignity of the constable is very important. We have changed the terminology constable, and now all constables for the past 1 decade are called the civil police officers, and head constables, senior civil police officers. This had a great effect on this designation change had a great effect on their dignity. And also Kerala was the first state to give a scale of pay higher than the LDC to the constable. So 8-hour duty system, Mr. Kamal Kumar mentioned the constraints, duty hours. We have an 8-hour duty system. We have an assured promotion scheme. Every constable can become sub-inspector in 22 years. We have also improved the training facilities like driving, swimming, communication skills, all computer skills, all being compulsory as part of recruit training itself. So these are a wide-ranging slew of measures have been initiated with the objective of enabling the policeman to be people-friendly and evolving systems to ensure that people-friendliness of the police is translated into the field so that public actually become beneficiaries of the people-friendly systems that we develop. We have started on this journey. There are many leagues that we have to cover. There are several deficiencies. I just briefly mentioned the paths we have taken. Whether we ultimately succeed or not, only time will tell. But we are encouraged by the responses that we have received in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob Saab. It's a very nice presentation. I have two comments to make. One is we are running short of time. So I suggest to the FDR team that the time may be increased from 1:30 to 2 at least.
No problem.
Because there are two more speakers. That is one. Second thing is, Jacob Saab, I have a suggestion to you. Use your influence with the Chief Minister of... Please ask him to invite all the DGPs of the states in India in 2 batches. I mean, 30 or so would be a big one. Please ask them to come and spend about 4 or 5 days in Kerala as the state guests and let them see what is happening there. And if you include the chairman of the ASCII also in the team, I would be very happy to come and see what is happening there. I think you should do that kindly.
Sir, several officers have come from the national...
No, but officially, individuals coming is different. System. Let him invite all the DGPs, in 2 batches to come over and see what is happening at the grassroots level, changes and all that. Now, may I invite Mr. Roy to make his presentation. I am very sorry we have all eaten into your time, but I can't help it. So please go ahead. Mr. Roy is one of the very senior officers. His specialization, his specialty is on the communal situation and communal rights and all that, public disorder. So please, it's floor is yours.
Am I audible?
Yeah, please, you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can all hear.
Yes, right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think such a informed and distinguished panelist, they have covered almost all the areas of policing. Modern policing, I think it is fully covered, including my areas. My areas, as you know, it was recruitment and training. And exact topic which was given to me was recruitment and training that is necessary to meet the challenging expectations of the public. Just to facilitate myself, just to make my life easier, let me rephrase it. I would like to ask, does police meet challenges of the contemporary world successfully? Or do we recruit policemen for the modern times? Do we train police as per requirement of the modern times? I think, I am sorry, both the areas which should have been the most important areas, most significant for policing, they are the most neglected. They are the least looked after. First, take the recruitment. Do we recruit people especially required for police? Or we just go and give employment to people? You take a very simplified example. When you go to recruit certain army men, certain officers or jawans, you go to recruit 100, but you end up with say 30 or 40 because you found only 30, 40 suitable to your job. But when you go to, you are a member of a board or you are a solo recruiter and you go to recruit in a particular area, you have been given the task to recruit 100 constables and there are 101 candidates. It means that only 1 will be left and 100 you will recruit from the merit or whatever is the criteria. You recruit 100 and you come back. So you don't look special qualities, special requirements, special traits. Mostly, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, I can say, and I think Jacob will bear me out in Kerala also. When a chief minister says that he has given employment to 5,000 people, it means that he has given government services to 5,000 people. And it may be very unfortunate that in almost all the areas, recruitment is dwindling. You don't recruit for most of the positions which are required for a developing society, but you recruit most for police and army. This may be a very shocking statement, but police is one of the areas which is giving most employment in backward states like Uttar Pradesh. So recruitment has become just like just a tool to give employment to certain people. If the chief minister is impartial, if the chief minister is honest, it may be on the merit. If the chief minister is not honest, then it may be his desire to see more and more people recruited from his constituency, from his caste, from his community. So these things will go on. I personally feel that police recruitment should also be based on not only on the number of vacancies available, but strictly on the requirement of the organization. Somehow it is not being done. As Mr. Padmanabhaiya in the initial comments, he has touched upon the system in the United Kingdom. I think that may be one of the models which we should think of adopting. Then we come to the training. Training, most of us, many of panelists are retired police officers. They know that training is the most neglected field of the profession, and mostly you will find that it is a punishment posting. Personally, I feel that except for National Police Academy, which has some system of getting people on merit or getting people on their utility, most of the training institutions in the country are dumping grounds. They will dump people, they will punish people, they will send them to the disheartened, disillusioned, demotivated, a thoroughly rejected policeman going as a trainer and presenting himself as a role model to the recruits of various levels, be it constables, sub-inspectors or gazette officers. You can simply imagine what type of impression or what kind of a role model he could be before his trainees. It is something I think generally we avoid emphasizing this particular aspect, but I think it should be debated upon. Recently, in fact, I think Ms. Maja and Mr. Padmanabhaiya both have mentioned the report by CSDS, and CSDS has given certain very disturbing realities. They have put very disturbing realities before us. We thought that increasing the educational level of policemen, say constable, initially when I joined the service, it was class 8, then it became matriculation, and in certain states now it is +2, intermediate or higher secondary is the minimum qualification. But simply we will have to ask this question after reading certain findings of the CSDS report. Is it sufficient to raise the educational level only? CSDS report says that more you are educated, more you are convinced that third-degree methods are best forms of policing. So simply by raising the bar in the area of higher education, I don't think it is going to serve us. It is the basic, unless we identify certain basic requirements for a good policeman, unless we say that these are the basic requirements which we I'm sorry, there is some problem. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? But you can't see me, as I understand.
No, we can see you.
See you now.
Achha,
Can
okay.
see?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, sir. So these are two areas which should have been the most important and which should have been given most attention from us, are most neglected. And then we will have to identify the reasons also. Just identifying problems may not help us. As Mr. Bhaiya has started his presentation, and he mentioned that the police as a modern institution is created by certain laws which were enacted in the 1860 decades, 1860, 1861, up to 73 when the CRPC came into existence. So modern police as a modern institution has been created by these tools. But these tools have created a force, these tools have created an organization which have served their masters very well. Till 1947, you see that police, whatever they were expected from the rulers of the day, they fulfilled their desire. But after 1947, why did we not change police? Why did we like to have the same organization, the same culture, the same value ethos even after 1947? Is it not so that our rulers, they also expected a force which is not law-abiding, which does not care, which does not bother for the constitution, which has civic rights or rights of the citizens? It has no meaning for it. In Uttar Pradesh, I can say that most popular and most favorite sub-inspector of a chief minister will be one who does not write cases against his followers, who writes false cases against his opponents. Till few years back, when we used to have witnessed large-scale booth capturings, the most popular police officer in the eyes of a most competent police officer, in the eyes of the politicians of the ruling party, was who could facilitate them in capturing booths, who could stop their rivals to come and use their franchisee. So our rulers of 1947, they also preferred this police, and they never bothered to change the basic character of the police. So recruitment and training, these were also not changed. The recruitment process was similar, except that few, say, educational qualifications were increased. Certain changes like some gender representation or something like that. But no basic change you will find in the character of police pre-47 and character of police after 47. The worst thing was that at many times I pondered to think that whether as a society do we believe in civilized police? Do we really want a civilized police? In no police, general elections, I found people demanding that we have every right to have a civilized police. Rather, our expectations is highly uncivilized. Mr. Kamal Kumar is from Hyderabad, National Police Academy is Hyderabad, and we should feel ashamed that only a year back, when a lady doctor was brutalized, she was killed, police took those criminals from the jail. Remember, from the jail they took them out, they killed them in the most, say, cold-blooded manner, and the people of Hyderabad, they not only garlanded, supported, welcomed, they made them heroes. So as a society, what type of police do you want? In Uttar Pradesh, many criminals who have killed a few police officers recently, they were killed in the most, say, in the crudest manner. And it got a lot of public support. So as a society, as a community, we will also have to think, do we really want a civilized police force? Do we really think that we deserve a better policing system than what we have these days? So these are the questions. I think these are related with training and recruitment process. Training, Mr. Kamal Kumar, who has been director of the academy, he will be better to tell us that most of our time is dedicated to the physical training. Very little care and attention and time is given to change the mindset of the young officers who are going to command their forces. So these are all things. I think all these questions are interlinked. Since the panel has discussed most of the issues which are relevant for modern policing, I thought only to give my ideas briefly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderfully put in a very brief manner. Thank you. The last speaker, I hope he is here, is the Chief Superintendent, Raj Kohli. I'm sorry, Mr. Kohli, you have been waiting for from 5:30 your time till now. So the floor is yours. The subject given to you is the latest UK example of community policing and current practices. I just wanted to add one question. You know, this police complaints, you know, verification into that has been going on, and it started in 1985 with some legislation, then it was changed in 2004 or 2006, and now in 2018, you have established the Independent Office of Police Conduct. I just wanted to know, if you have the time, what do people feel about this latest body, this 2018 Independent Office of Police Conduct, and about its working? That you could add after your regular subject. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. You described Mr. Rai's presentation as wonderfully put in brief. Mine will be brief, but I'm not sure it'll be as wonderfully put. So the question is sort of the reforms and what does community-based policing in the United Kingdom look like? Now, from the very beginning, I make no comment on Indian policing. So anything I say is merely observational. I make no comment. I'm not experienced about it. But I have picked up a number of themes from the previous speakers. There is a saying that a democracy gets the police service it deserves. And actually, Mr. Rai's point about does society in India want a civil police service, I think is possibly the best question that's been asked today. That's a very important question, because I don't think we ask the question, how do you want to be policed? What we do in the United Kingdom, what we do in London, and please, the Metropolitan Police Service, as great as it is not perfect, far from it. But what we have tried to do is we've tried to put community policing at the very heart of what we do. So what does that mean? It means that we have neighbourhood officers that are within their wards, their small geographical areas, for a number of years, doing what Mr. Panu suggested, which was being part of the community, and so that people can access them and understand and then start to problem solve some of the issues. That's the first thing that we've done. And what we've done now is we've extended it to a point where, in fact, the community now helps recruit and select future police officers. And in fact, next week, I'm appointing a new superintendent, and 2/3 of the panel will be 2 members of the public. Myself as a chair and 2 members of the public. Because for me, it's really important that as a public servant, the public have a view and an observation as to who is going to be policing them. So we've really taken policing to that degree. It was touched upon earlier on about professionalizing the police service. Yes, to become a police officer now, you will either get a degree or have to have a degree, but that's just not good enough. There will be continual professional development. That's very, very important. There's no point in getting your qualification and spending 30 years not updating it, not improving it. So that is something that we're doing in the United Kingdom. But I'd like to move away from this concept of that police is about fighting crime. In the United Kingdom, about 2/3 of what we deal with is not crime. It's missing people, it's mental health, it could be antisocial behaviour, it could be whatever it is. 2/3 of the demand of policing in the UK is not crime. So in the United Kingdom, I would describe us as crisis managers, of which a crime is a crisis. And I find it's really important to see, because to consider, because you talk about perhaps the lack of investment in Indian policing. You talk about huge vacancy rates. Potentially some research needs to be done in what is the demand on that group of people? And should all that demand come to that group of people, or should some of it be taken by local government? For example, if it's antisocial behavior, should be the better parks, better street lighting, better CCTV coverage, things that the police service do not own, but are expected to police. So I think it'd be worthwhile exercise understanding what is the demand put on the police service. We talk about policing by consent, that Robert Peel principle. I revert back to my view, which is we get the police service that we deserve. I don't think we ask people what sort of police service they want. I also think that certainly in the United Kingdom, we heavily police the working class, probably disproportionately so than we do the middle class. And I don't know whether that's a similar concept in India. I suspect it probably is. I think it was Mr. Panus again who talked about the cadets. I think that is fantastic. We have police officers based in schools, and their jobs are to engage with young people, to understand young people, and to understand exactly what the challenges are. Because, of course, young people are the future criminals, are the future people that might cause society some difficulties. So I think it's really important that cadets and having schools officers is a model that Indian police might want to look at. But I come away with two key things from the discussions I've heard. There are structural changes which are important. You cannot afford to have the vacancy rate that you describe, because that makes the job unmanageable. You cannot afford to pay police officers the sorts of money that have been quoted, because it's just not fair or acceptable, and you're not going to attract the best people. And then there's a cultural change. There has to be a cultural change. It doesn't matter what the law says or what the policy says. The people that enact or enforce that law or deliver those policies, if their culture isn't right, then it's not. Then there's a difficulty. And I do note that terminology like police force, enforcement of the law, policeman. In Britain, we use the term police officer because 30% of our police establishment are female. And I do think that one of the previous speakers spoke about the number of women in policing in India as being round about 10%. It's got to be nearer 50% because we police half the population. And I think the female perspective brings something different to the table. And the final bit, what we're doing in the United Kingdom is we are really pursuing diversity, inclusion, and equality. So what does that mean? That means that in London, 40% of Londoners look like me, brown or black skin. Therefore, the police service that serves those Londoners must look more like me. And therefore, 50% should be women, 6% should be Sikh, etc., etc., etc. And the reason for that is because I have a cultural knowledge of what it's like to be of Indian heritage living in London. And I'm able to much more easily problem solve what those issues are. And that diversity of whether it's gender or ethnicity or religion brings in a diversity of thinking. And I do wonder whether the Indian Police Service does not have as a diverse way of thinking as it might do. But what I will say, though, is Mr. Panus has shown how you can change the culture of a police service relatively quickly. And in cultural terms, 10 years is relatively quick. So I suspect the people on this call want change to happen on Monday. It's not going to happen on Monday. You may not even see it or feel it because it happens so slowly, but it will happen. But I think Mr. Panus's example, and then Mr. Padmanabhan, by your view about all the DDGs going to Kerala to see what's happening, I think it's a great idea. Because we need to have values-based leadership. And I think the values that Mr. Panus has talked about in Kerala is exactly where modern-day policing in India needs to go. That's my bit. I said I'd be brief, but not as wonderful as Mr. Rai. And I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent Raj Kohli. You brought a new perspective about policing. Your examples which you have given about selection of the superintendent, which you are going to do, involving the people. And crime is only one part, crime control is only one part of the policing, really. I mean, it is being part of the problem solving for the people. And your question, what sort of policing do we really want? And the diversity in the police force, with the gender, 50% women and 40% black men, this one is great. Change the culture of policing to value-based policing. These are extremely valid points you have made. And I think we would benefit from your experience there. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you. Over to you, the FDR team. Now, yes. I think we have half an hour, we said. Any yes. questions and all that
can you can take a few questions? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So we'd like to start this off with a question to you, sir. We have a question here asking that as the problems and the need for reforms and the kind of reforms required are well understood, how would you prioritize the needs? How would you prioritize these reforms right now to make the implementation more free of resistance? Sir, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Unmute. Yeah.
Yes.
Let me answer your question in this way. A lot of things can be done by the police themselves. I would take what Kamal Kumar has said, all those problems about housing, about promotions, about posts not being filled, about money not being spent. These are all within the competence of the police department itself. Who told them not to fill the vacancies which are sanctioned? Who told them not to spend the modernization funds? Who told them not to spend the training programs? This one also, training budget also, 11% of the budget has not been spent last year. Now, there is a lot of variation from state to state in the training budget. He said 1.1 average, but that is not true. In case of Delhi, it is 2.8 or some such thing. So a lot of these things, are within the competence of the top police. This one, they can be done. If they become people friendly, as somebody has said, leave the political argument aside. If nobody would tell police that you should not be people friendly, people friendliness has two things. One is not only in control of crime, but in getting intelligence. Intelligence is very important. Without people's cooperation, you can't do anything. So I think the basic one is you start with these things. If there is a cultural change, I think slowly you would get rid of the political people come only in transfers, in your transfers also at the high level. And let me give one example. In UP, there was a case, the CM used to directly transfer the station house officer. That means the SI. When I was Home Secretary, this is what used to happen. Mr. Rai would confirm. But today it is not so. I mean, they might transfer the Deputy Superintendent of Police and Superintendent of Police at the higher level, but not that. So I think the change would come, So I think we should do that. Thank you.
Sir, as a small follow-up to that, sir, we understand that any successful reform effort would involve altering the incentives of the stakeholders, right? So since we know that these reforms are not being implemented, do you think there is a need to alter the incentives, and what kind of incentives do we need to alter?
No, monetary incentives are not really important, I tell you. A lot of youngsters, especially in the police, IPS, there are people who don't want to join IAS, they want to join IPS because they feel it is in their life's mission to sort of put down crime. There are brilliant youngsters, who have been coming into that. But the point is, it's not incentives. It's a changing the mindset of the people at the lower levels, completely, the operational levels. As I told you, supervisory level, everybody above the sub-inspector is a supervisor of some nature or the other. But you change this one. So I think the recruitment and training are very, very, very important. You don't take the people for 4 or 5 years and one lot you recruit 15,000, 20,000 policemen. Where would you train them? Where are the training facilities? What training would you give them? Great example was given by Mr. Rai. you go and you want to select 100, the first 100 who come, you just pick up. These are not police. So I think it's quite simple, the incentives is not the question. The question is one of changing the basic, what should I say, the character of the police. And, as I said, people would demand only two things from the police. An efficiency in crime detection and crime prevention, and fairness in dealing with the people. Now, what does fairness depend upon? Fairness would depend on, a number of factors. But I would tell you, the fairness, people would perceive fairness when they have an opportunity to participate. People should, police interaction as they are doing in Kerala. Police actions are even-handed and have objectivity. And people are treated with dignity and respect. And then people must trust the motives of the police, that they have concern for their well-being and take into account their needs and concerns. This have nothing to do with the higher control of the politicians on the police department. I think these are all operational level decisions. I think they can be taken by the police leadership.
I have two questions, if I may intervene briefly. One to Mr. Raj Kohli. We have in India a very blind system, adherence to seniority. Very little meritocracy, practically everywhere in civil services, to be truthful, and police particularly so. So how do we institutionalize a reward-based system? And one to Mr. Jayaprakash, what you've done is remarkable. It's a very thrilling story. You don't have to go far. If only we imitate what Kerala is doing in the rest of India, as Mr. Padmanabhan has said, I think we are on our way to significant change. How did you get a political buy-in? Why did the politicians think it is worthwhile to do it? That fairness is actually in their interest, and B, that there is a public demand and therefore potentially vote. I mean, it's amazing that in Kerala you could do it. Shri Raj Kohli first.
Dr. Narayan, it's a great question. So first and foremost, the question was, what should be the priority for reforms? So rewind slightly. I personally think that each district should have real and clear community oversight via an independent advisory group that sits with the chief officer of that area to understand what the issues are and give that clear oversight. In terms of reward and recognition, it's rarely about financial reward. Financial reward is good, but actually, rewarding people or recognizing with some sort of medal, some sort of commendation, having a big ceremony where they've done some great policing that have benefited the public. I'm not cited what goes on in India. All I know is that in where I work, reward and recognition is very clear. We're asking people to do 10, 11, 12 hours a day. They do some brilliant work. The current commentary around Indian policing is one of negativity. That's a shame, because I am sure there are many, many examples of brilliant police work, but that's not really recognised. That bit needs to be recognised as much as the negative aspects of policing. And for the record, UK policing is far from perfect. So I don't want to be sitting here thinking, implying that we have all the answers. And there was a question about the Independent Office for Police Conduct, what the public think about the IOPC. Unfortunately, the publics don't trust the IOPC, even though it's independent. And that is a difficulty we find ourselves in. But they are truly independent. But the public still don't trust that aspect of getting what they feel is procedural justice, where they think they've been wronged by the police service. So a slightly longer answer than the question you asked, Dr. Narayan, but a great question. Thank you.
Yep.
Jayaprakash.
Sir, thank you for the question. It was a very difficult process. As I mentioned earlier, people were very suspicious about even the very idea of police reform. Then I realized that people were getting suspicious of the motives of the police. Often, police reform is seen as a ploy by some senior police officer to get more power for himself. We speak of autonomy for the DGP and things like that. I said this Home Minister is the worst human being in the world. And therefore, the DGP is the purest specimen of human nobility. This is the kind of thing. They will resist it. If you say the DGP, let all the power go to the DGP and no power to the Home Minister. If you suggest or initiate police reform proposals as taking away power from somebody and giving it to somebody else, we are likely to fail. So what must be, the police reform is not against anybody. It is for every stakeholder. For every stakeholder, the public benefits from it, the policemen benefit from it, the police hierarchy benefits from it, the politicians benefit from it, the government benefits from it. So, we somehow were able to initiate a large number of discussions. In fact, I remember Maya herself came down to the first ever seminar held on police reforms in Kerala in the year 2003. That is the time in which a lot of debate was going on. So public discussion on every aspect of this. And Kerala, we are lucky to have a high degree of media penetration, high degree of literacy, high degree of political consciousness, a culture of debate, a culture of discussion. In one and the same family, you will find a communist, a BJP worker, as well as in the same family, brothers belonging to different political parties. Even communities are spread in, there may be a Christian, may be a communist, a Christian may be a congressman, a Christian may be a BJP fellow also in Kerala. So this kind of discussion culture. So when we start debating and discussing this like that, slowly a build-up happens in favor. And therefore, I also got together a group of officers who are committed to this cause. We used every single opportunity of any incident happening, any single public incident involving any discussion on police. We used to guide it towards some police reform aspect. Had this been done, this would not have happened. This bad thing happened because that thing was not happened. Instead of trying to individualize and blame a particular individual for a bad thing, we generally turned it around a systemic defect and a system failure. Generally, all over India, there's a tendency to blame an individual where something bad happens. Often the individual is innocent. It is a system which has failed the individual as well as the people. So if you are able to highlight things like that, there will be some, but Kerala is a special case because of high literacy, high consciousness, high debating or discussing mentality. People don't act simply because they disagree with you. We are fortunate for having that culture.
God's own country.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, Ms. Naya Darwala, we have a few questions regarding the image of the police that you spoke about. So to start off, how important do you think is the deep-rooted biases in our society to this whole, the negative perceptions of both the police, of the people and of the people to the police? And I've also, to extend this question, I've read the article that you've written where you said that this lockdown actually presents as a great opportunity to change the image of the police, right? So could you please elaborate on that and the way forward, how we can seize this opportunity?
The first part of your question was what was it about? I'm sorry. I was distracted. I apologize.
No problem. So it was about the deep-rooted biases in our society that cause this public perception of the police or the police's perception of public.
Yeah.
And addendum, Maya, just as an extension of that, Raj Kohli said it's also about what kind of police the society want. Does the society really want civilized police, particularly the vocal sections and the middle classes? It's not merely that the police are bad and people are good. So how do we confront this problem?
Yeah, very often I hear police gentlemen saying at seminars, etc., well, we haven't been dropped from heaven. We just come from the society that we have, and therefore we reflect that society, and that is good enough. See, it's the good enough part that I worry about. We've talked about community policing, which is a phrase which I like. People-friendly policing is a word that is loaded with which people? Kerala people, Bihar people, UP people, Dalit people. Which people? It's not a question of just people friendly. It's being friendly. It's being upholding of the law, upholding of the constitution, upholding of the directions that we are supposed to be going in, seeing ourselves as a service. You can't say, I came to the police with biases, therefore I will continue to hold them for the next 35 years. Especially the supervisory categories. And yes, it has everything to do with the way you are recruited, the way you get promoted, the way you are trained, what is the content of the training, what is the punishment given. When I say punishment, perhaps it's a harsh word, nobody likes it, but the accountability for actions. I am always amazed. I think these are all excuses for not doing what you don't have the courage to do because there is so much disincentive for doing the right thing. Presently, at least I can speak in North India and I can speak really across the country. But when you see Kerala is also the water raising all ships, and therefore there being a police that is leading the public in a way. It has taken the consent of the public. It is leading the public. But that is not to say that Bihar and UP could not do it. They could do it. I don't believe that the public in Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, any place is steeped so deeply in bias that if you took a consensus, if you took the trouble to ask these people, if you took social audits of police and judicial functioning in a taluka, in a district, that you would find that there is no thirst for justice and no understanding of it. You might go, it might take longer, but the whole conversation itself would open up the door to going towards the police that we want. I don't believe that we need to be beaten into submission and therefore say that there is no crime, or we will tell you what your crime is, even if there is no crime. As we are doing with this poor child, Disha, whatever her name is. Where there is no crime, we are creating a crime because there is a political incentive to create that crime. So I think there is a lot of stuff to clean up before we can even go. But the bias that is reflected in the police, the police cannot say that these are the biases that are held by society and therefore we can continue to have them. You have to train them out. You have to go towards what Mr. Rai's brother or Mr. Rai calls constitutional education. And you have to keep with that. And that is what the police are there for. They are to protect us from each other through the constitutional route of rule of law. But if nobody knows what the rule of law is, then how can they have an adherence to it? How can they see a different paradigm from their socially lived paradigm? Sorry, long answer for a short question.
May I just add one thing? I think in the training part of it, instead of the technical training on forensic, this one, or ballistics and all that, the greatest emphasis should be on police behavior and on police culture. These are the two things ingrained in them, and they need to be changed. And these have no political content here. I think this is what is required to be done.
That's a very, very good point. Technical things you can teach to almost anybody. Behavioral changes is key to all of this.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
The statistics show that there are biases that are held against Muslims, against women, against STSCs, against the poor, are by a large number of policemen. But you may say 35%, you may say 50%. I can't remember the percentage just now to tell you. But that means that there are also a significantly large amount of people who don't hold these biases.
Yeah, very true.
But they are not privileged enough, they are not incentivized enough to hold the premier institutional culture. Now, whose fault is that?
You answer. What is your answer? Whose fault is it?
Honestly, like I think that some structural deficiencies do hold back the police, but hold back the police from performance in a few areas, not in being just or unjust.
Yeah.
That is something else. That is to do with culture. But the culture that is encouraged within the police and perpetuated within the police has something to do with the level of lack of courage of the supervisory classes.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. This is what I'm saying.
And they must recognize it before they, at least don't think about what is your so-called political master going to do tomorrow to you. But there is so much you can do in the behavior that you provide for your subordinates.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you.
Probably Mr. B.N. Roy may like to comment, sir, because he is in a state which has perhaps the most difficult situation. So,
for the public,
the absence of political will, to what extent can police leadership actually bring about change in a state like UP or many other states, unlike Kerala?
The political interference, according to me, is only in the transfers and postings, not in other things. So I think you have to live with it for some time because you can't change it. But there have been cases where heads of the departments, I don't know, the police, have refused to order transfers on the basis of, on no basis. I, for one, did that when I was in the cooperative department. The commissioner for corporation is a fellow who is to transfer the deputy registrars. That power was taken away from me and it was put in the minister secretariat. I resigned from the post of this one. I said I asked for a transfer. It is by statute is it under the Register of Cooperative Societies because there is an act. I said you have taken away the power without telling me. So I said please transfer me from there. They reversed the order. The chief minister intervened and he said we banged the Minister for Cooperation and then they gave back the powers to me. There could be cases. So, but that is a long-term one. But leaving that, I think many more things can be done by the leadership. Police leadership.
Let me take the police officer's position. My experience as a district magistrate, I could do pretty much what I felt was right, and there's very little political interference in transfers postings. Whereas my SP, an outstanding officer, a very upright officer, could not get a single SHO transferred in his own district without the clearance of the state capital. I think the burden, the pressure on the police is far greater than the rest of the civil administration. Because the whole political system has an insecurity complex, a belief that without police on their side, they cannot survive. I think there is a real problem for the police officers. We must also recognize that.
You know, the pressures are there on everybody, whether it is police or bureaucracy or everywhere, the pressures are there. What was the DGP doing? If the DGP had been transferred 1 month, what would the next DGP do? Let him transfer 4 or 5 DGPs, you know, in a month's time. There would be a revolt among the people also. People would see through that. Why? In the election time, people have been removed. The DGPs have been removed in our Telugu states. They have been reinstated within a couple of months, you know, thereafter. There have been cases, you are fully aware of it.
Some of the removals were not always justified. The Election Commission also...
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But Mr.
They have been removed and they have been reinstated. I mean, the truth prevails ultimately. So I think some sacrifices have to be done, you know. You can't have wonderful this one, you know, I would go along with the politicians and I want to stick to my job. That is why Supreme Court has given you orders now for 2 years you should not be transferred, not only to the DGPs, but even line functionaries at various places, including an SHO.
V.N. Rai, sir, do you have anything to add?
I think he's offline. It looks.
Sir, please unmute yourself. He's muted, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Is it, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
You're audible, yes.
Okay. I think, sir, you were mentioning some very wonderful times But these days, times are a little difficult. When you were Union Home Secretary, there was a Chief Minister in Uttar Pradesh who used to claim that crime has been, crime has reduced to 30%, 40%, 50% every year. So, meaning thereby that there will be a time when Uttar Pradesh will not have any crime.
Any crime at all.
Today, what is happening in Uttar Pradesh, sir, is frightening. I think I should mention here that 25% criminals who are being caught, they are first shot in their legs. Bullets are shot in their legs, then only they are produced before a magistrate or before a judge. And our Chief Minister claims that this is the only way to control crime. So few police officers were killed in Kanpur, and in the, you say, the most hated manner, police caught the criminals, they killed them. And an inquiry commission under a retired Supreme Court judge has been established, and as we were expecting, nothing happened. So you just cannot believe how difficult times we are living in. It is unless, since I spoke very briefly because I thought that all the aspects have been covered, unless the people themselves demand that we want a civilized police, we want a police which abides by law, which respects the constitution. Unless police themselves demand, I don't think there is much going to happen. After all, why did people of Hyderabad, they facilitated those policemen who brought criminals out of jail and killed them? And so this is, in fact, our society respects those policemen who are brute, who use third-degree methods, who beat people. I have received many complaints when I was the Superintendent Police that your such and such sub-inspector is a thorough gentleman and he does not deserve to be retained there. And I always used to joke that there are 100 history sheeters. Would you like one of them be made the in charge of the police station? But this is the irony of fate. After all, let me, sir, only one sentence, that I personally feel that the saying that people deserve king, which people get the kings which they deserve, I will extend it. People get police which they deserve. As a society, do we not deserve this police? So these are some uncomfortable questions, and I think we must deal with these.
Rai Sahab, I want to give you an example. The former Chief Justice of India recently has mentioned that it's foolish to go to a court because he himself said it would take years and nothing would happen. You would wash your dirty, you would wash your dirty linen there and all that. Now I'm answering your question: why the Hyderabad people have celebrated the police killing of those 4 people? Because they were at the end of their tether. They knew that if a normal this one takes place, it would never find justice. These chaps, on some excuse or the other, the cases would drag on for 10-15 years. Ultimately, on some technical excuse, they would be out of this one. You know, technical excuse in the sense, you would remember the case of Assam High Court, where they have said, CBI has no jurisdiction at all in the last 20 years in Assam, they said, because some notification issued in God's own, some 20 years ago was not a proper GR, proper circular. So they said all the cases decided by the CBI are all without jurisdiction. Now, what type of an absurd these things? So people get fed up, that is the reason. Not that they are encouraging this type of, this one all the time, It is a turning point. Even the worm turns, they say, it's a turning point,
No, we have a difficult challenge, but I think there's no room for despair. I can understand in parts of the country it's frightening. But again, Mr. Jacob Panos gives us a fantastic sense of hope. After in our own country, if it could happen in one part of the country and the elected representatives found it worthwhile politically and in terms of their duty, I'm sure while it will not happen overnight, it's possible elsewhere too. That is the hope of this conference.
Yes, Jacob has mentioned it has not happened overnight. Overnight. 2004 onwards, he has been talking. Now, the reform started with 1980, with the Police Commission report. It took 20 plus 11, 31 years for the Model Act, which was recommended in 1980, to take place.
as Chief Superintendent Raj Kohli said, it will not happen by Monday. It will take maybe 10 years.
Yeah, it won't happen by Monday.
Pursue it. Any other questions, Shruti?
Yes, sir. In the interest of time, can we have one final question directed to Shri Kamal Kumar, sir? Sir, regarding the police training, we have a couple of questions. A is, why does in your experience as the head of a training institute, could you tell us what is the constraint, or why are training institutes struggling to retain instructors? And B, what if we were to expand the role of policing from just crime investigators to crisis managers like Raj Kohli sir suggested, what is the necessary investment in the infrastructure or training that's required to make that possible?
Yeah, your first question was about the need for incentivizing the faculty positions in training institutions. Now, the need is, of course, undeniable, and nobody can dispute that or have a debate on that. But then the basic issue is that there's a culture, not just in police, but in all civil services, in all sectors of civil services, that training job traditionally has come to be regarded as an unattractive job, a job where nobody wants to go, nobody wants to post some good officer to that job. So that is one reason why good officers are not coming. Coming to the question of incentivization, a lot has been thought about this in the past few decades. In fact, way back in the mid-80s, the Government of India had come up with a scheme of providing 40% monetary allowances to training faculty in all training institutions. I thought I was a beneficiary of that at the time, because I was heading the training institution of the Intelligence Bureau at that time. So, but then that didn't help, because again, it's not considered to be an attractive posting. Unlike in the armed forces, where, it becomes a stepping stone for getting into positions of authority, the general's positions and so on. Here, it's considered to be something which is more or less a stigma, if I may so say so. So that culture has to change, and that it becomes very difficult. And it's a long-run process. I'm also, like Jayaprakash Narayan, I'm also a hardcore optimist. Things will change, and things are gradually changing, but then it will take a very, very long time. So that's your first question. The second question, Shruti, may I request you to repeat it?
Yes, sir. So the question was, if we were to expand the functions of the police the way Raj Kohli sir suggested, from just investigating crime or crime control to crisis managers, what is the kind of investment we need in the training and infrastructure to make that expansion possible?
Well, that is a question which can't be, decided offhand. It will need a lot of thinking, a lot of, ideas will have to be explored and all that. You have to identify as to what kind of exactly what kind of training you want to give. If it's training in knowledge and skills alone, it's easier to identify the infrastructural requirements. But when it comes to training in attitudes, that is the third aspect of training, that becomes a very difficult area, because, attitudinal training is not easy to impart. And there have been several methods people have experimented, some with no success at all, some with very little success, and that kind of thing. Like in the NPA, we introduced the system of case study method on attitudinal training. But even that, it's a very slow process, number one. The time available for training would not admit of only case study kind of methods and all that. So the question, the short answer, Shruti, is that, unless you'll have to apply your mind very, very thoroughly to decide on the infrastructural resources needed for that kind of training. So that is that. But I would also like to, depart from this subject a little bit and clarify a little on some of the points which the chair, Mr. Pradhanabhai, had mentioned. This is about the need for reform and the role of the police leadership. As I have been advocating, and Maya would bear me out, Jacob will also bear me out, I've been advocating that much of the reform can be initiated by the police leadership themselves. In fact, we did an exercise in 2005 in the committee that was appointed by MHA to look into all the existing recommendations on police reform and identify some core, recommendations which would be very, very essential in that process and in that exercise. We had listed out, out of the 685 or something total recommendations of all the committees put together, the National Police Commission, the Padmanabhaya Committee, Gore Committee, this committee, that committee, all those put together. There were as many as about 300 recommendations which could be implemented by police leadership themselves. Things like why FIRs are not being registered. If there is pressure from police leadership, things can improve. But there are certain areas which are, of course, key areas also, where police leadership become helpless. For instance, filling up the vacancies, as Mr. Padmanabhaya said, why can't the police leadership themselves do? The problem is that most of the state governments put total ban, absolute ban on recruitment because of their own fiscal position being very difficult. They put entire, recruitment process to all departments totally banned. It's only in the wake of a major law and order situation or a major crime situation that relaxation is ordered for police. So there is a question of the leadership taking a role in filling up the vacancies because of these reasons. Similarly, transfers. Now, it's not that political leadership is happy with transferring only the DGP and the SP and all that. Gone are the days, sir. As Vibhuti said, sir, we are living in very difficult times. Today, the Chief Minister is not interested in who the DGP is. He appoints a number 2 or number 3 in the hierarchy, and through him, he manages the entire department. DGP is only holding a ceremonial position. That's number 1. Much worse. The Chief Minister is not so much interested in appointing district SPs as he is interested in appointing SHOs. And not just the Chief Minister, all the other ministers, the MLAs, the MPs, everybody would like an SHO of his choice to be posted in his area. So this is the kind of a situation we are living in, sir. And there are not just SHOs, this is not limited to that level alone. They've gone down to the postings and transfers issues relating to head constables, relating to ASIs. So that is the kind of a situation we are living in. The third point I would like to refer to is about the underutilization of modernization of police funds, police forces scheme funds. Now, it's a fact that huge amounts of funds, substantial amounts of funds have been sanctioned under that scheme. And it's also a fact that not much is being spent, and much of it remains unspent. But then there are problems. Problems are that the scheme envisages that the central government will give you this much of money only if this percentage is sanctioned by the state government. So there is a state component and there is a central component. The state governments are not releasing their component, and therefore the central component is also not available to the police for this thing. Another thing is the rules are such that there is an empowered committee. There's an empowered committee at the central level, there's an empowered committee at the state level. They all have to approve every proposal. And it's such a time-consuming job that sanctions will come only in the month of March 15th, March 10th or some such thing. By the time you float tenders, etc., everything is over, funds lapse, and that is the kind of thing. So there are enormous delays. There are problems and problems. I'm not saying that police leadership can do nothing, but there are certain areas where police leadership can do a lot. There are certain areas where their hands are tied. So I thought I must set the record straight. Thank you. Sir, you're muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on Kamal Kumar's these things. I beg to slightly differ from him. You know about the funds. I have noticed that police departments are always held either by the Chief Minister himself or by the second most powerful minister in the cabinet. Now, when they are in charge, to say that the funds are not being released is something which I can't understand. I mean, I can understand some, useless minister, without any powers, pleading inability to find funds. Second thing, what you said applies across the entire spectrum of governance, not only police department. But the exceptions have been made. Essential services, they have said no cut should be made on sanctioned posts. You have sanctioned the post. I think it's a question of how you represent the particular matter, No, I don't agree with that. The second thing is, you said transfers of, SHOs, constables and all that. Does the minister or whoever it is, the local MLA or somebody, give written orders on these things? No. Then can't somebody put up a fight and saying that we would not implement this? I mean, if the complete organization is completely broken, spineless, and you say that nothing can be done, well, exactly nothing can be done. If you want to take a softer this one,
spine and not kept in those places, they are removed.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, the SP would be transferred, the DIG would be transferred. But that is not the end of all. I mean, people have faced these things. Now, training jobs, you have said, your point is correct. Training jobs are supposed to be second rate. Do you know why? The main reason, I mean, one must face it, because you can't make money. I'm not talking about the police alone. I'm talking of all the training jobs. You can't make that extra, money somewhere, because training mein kaun dega paisa. The second thing is, you can't give favors in a training job. What favors can you do? You don't have executive power of transferring this fellow here or transferring that fellow, either on your own or at the instance of a politician. This is the reason. The culture has to change. It has changed. It is changing. But I think if the police leadership can work, I'm saying, how is it some states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand or Kerala, I mean, Kerala, we are repeatedly saying, if they could do, others cannot do. I think it's a question of showing some amount of resistance, These are the things I just wanted to mention. Now, one more thing. Mr. Raj Kohli, one second, please. Raj Kohli
Maya ma'am has to leave.
Sorry?
Maya ma'am has another... Miss Maya Darwala, she has another meeting and she needs to leave.
Would you give me half a second or half a minute?
Certainly, but I have to leave after this.
Okay, please. Floor is yours.
No, I have nothing to say, sir, except thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mayaji, for having come and participated. Your comments have been extremely useful. The perceptions of police about
JP,
public and all that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shruti. Thank you.
Bye, Maya.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you.
Bye, Mr. Punus. Bye, Mr. Kohli. Bye, Mr. Rai.
Yes, Padmanabh, sorry.
No, I have no comments. Please go ahead. The FDR team can take over.
Sir, this has been a great session. Sir, if you could just provide your concluding remarks. I'd like to thank all the participants and panelists for staying over time and providing your insights. So if you could just provide your concluding remarks, we'll end the session.
I would suggest that Jayaprakash Narayan ji should give the concluding remarks, because we are a panel. We are a panel and he is the one who organized this. I don't know whether he has become wiser or he has become more cynical, after listening to some of us. But let him conclude whatever we have to say. I was only trying to react to what Captain Kohli has said, Senior Superintendent Kohli. He was talking about Police Act in UK as crisis managers, not only, and crime is one of the crises. I don't think we have reached that stage in India where we should worry saying the police, if they have to take over as crisis managers, what further training is required. I think this is futuristic. It would be 30 years hence. First, let them do the policing job, the crime and all those things. Then the crisis would come. England also has not happened in one day. They have been reforming their acts in the last 20 years. Every 5 years, that is what they have been doing. I have studied their system very well. But in India, it's a theoretical question right now. Over to you, Jayaprakash ji.
Thank you, sir. I'll be brief. I have been a great beneficiary of this session, as I'm sure many viewers are. It is a reality check, how tough the task is. It's also very inspiring. Mr. Jacob knows, it's remarkable the work you have done. Raj Kohli, how Other democracies also struggle through it. It's not that one day they built the kind of systems they have in Britain or some other countries. But the central question, unless we as enlightened citizens start raising our voice and coming up with constructive and sensible solutions consistently, without any partisan intent, unless we take all these issues outside the prism of partisan politics and be willing to discuss, debate, and be participants in change, praise the good changes and resist the bad changes with good reasons. Unless that happens consistently, real change will not happen. I have actually great sympathy for the policemen who harbor under tremendous political and public pressure. I also have great sympathy for elected politicians because at the end of the day, they are terrified of fulfilling the demands, sometimes unreasonable demands in a desperately poor society. And the fear that if the police are given a legitimate role in a lawful manner, constitutional manner, there is a genuine fear in the minds of many politicians that they may lose control and public may blame them and their whole political futures may be at stake. So I think it's not a fight between heroes and villains. There are real challenges in a democracy. And I think the 3 states you mentioned, Kerala in particular, thanks to leadership of people like Jacob Manos, and states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, they showed us the way. I'm sure while it takes time, the rest of the country can follow. It's a terrific roadmap, very inspiring session. And thank you, Mr. Raj Kohli. You woke up so early in the morning and you gave us your time generously. These are 2 worlds apart, what the UK is in democratic evolution and what we are. But you have been very patient and sympathetic and understanding of our plight as a country of your own origin. And I hope that one day, maybe 25 years later, if not today, we will be able to aspire to the goals that you are today accomplishing. Thank you very much for a wonderful session. And we will, I promise you, we will follow it up. It's not merely a talking shop. We will follow it up and we need the leadership from all of you, Mr. Kamal Kumar, Maya, who left us. She gave us a rich harvest of the poor perception of the police by the public. And that needs to be changed. There's no point blaming the policemen and believing that they are the villains. I completely refuse to do that. I believe they are genuinely in great difficulties. They're going through tremendous stress, and we have a duty to look at it as our collective problem and fight for change. And I hope we'll be successful in that. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well done to Shruti and the team for organising this across many continents and thousands of miles. Excellent work, team. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sudhi. Thank you, Sudhi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We are not seeing Shweta at all.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, the Chair, Mr. Padmanabhaya.
Thank you, sir.
For a lifetime in this field and is generously given his time and energy and insights. Thank you very much, sir.
Be safe, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal Kumar.
Thank you. Bye, Jacob. Bye. Bye. Bye, sir.
Rai has left. Thanks to Rai.
Bye. Bye, Shruti.
Bye, sir.
Good day, Dr. Jayaprakash. Good day.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to inform all the participants that our next session is at 5 p.m. and it's about addressing the challenges of modern policing and is going to focus on improving forensic infrastructure, strengthening police communications and mobility, and minimizing the use of force in crowd control. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
No. Thank you so much. And I would certainly read all these things.